Today's episode of Something to Wrestle With is brought to you from SaveWithBruce.com. Of course, you've seen Save with Bruce this week on the WWE Network, but Save with Bruce is helping families coast to coast save tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm talking to you. If you're a homeowner and you've got a 30-year loan, what are you doing? Bruce and I can help you get out of debt faster and with cheaper monthly payments. You even get to skip your next two house payments. That's right. Skip your next two house payments. Give yourself a little summer vacation. Why don't you? And at the same time, we can even help you tackle all that credit card debt. If you feel stuck making your minimum payments, Bruce and I can hook you up right now at SaveWithBruce.com. But maybe best of all, if you're a renter, we can get you into a house of your own with no money down. Now, you don't need perfect credit for any of this. Even credit scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's absolutely no money out of pocket. If we can't save you money, we won't waste your time. But if you're looking to remodel, if you're looking to turn your house into your dream home with no money out of pocket, we can make it happen. You want to get rid of your credit card debt? Done. Maybe you'd like to buy a house with no money down, get rid of that apartment? We can make it happen right now at SaveWithBruce.com. NMLS number 65084, Equal Housing Lender.
Welcome to Something to Wrestle With. Bruce Prichard. Well, you know. That's not a rib.
She pooted.
What a rip.
No, yeah, but there's no box of gimmicks.
Rumor and innuendo.
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo. Was he there? I was there.
Say something about
I don't give a shit. I ain't scared of shit.
I ain't scared of shit.
Fuck him.
Q Bruce.
I love you take the cheese. Double cheeseburger. You take the break. Double cheese. Well, you know. And then double mayo. You know, it's called chicken salad. Double onion, mother. Oh, you're nothing but an eggs.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle With. Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
I am excellent. How in the hell are you doing, man? It's a beautiful day.
Man, it is. We have had one heck of a week. We really appreciate everybody hanging with us. We've done some different stuff this week. Of course, we were on the WWE Network this past Wednesday, and we covered Shawn Michaels, 1995. And to my surprise, this is the episode that WWE liked the most.
Well, we all seem to be surprising ourselves and everybody else here a lot lately, so I'm going to take it, man.
Yeah, I'm not hating it. Of course, you are on location this week as you guys do another episode of Major League Wrestling, which you can catch Fridays on BN Sports. But you also had another shot on TV, thanks to your boy Layfield. He got you on the Fox Business Channel. What's up with that?
Well, you know, somebody needed to talk about the hottest podcast property in the entire world, by God, and talking a little bit about WWE and Saudi Arabia. And as we're doing it, they were so damn just interested in what the hell we were doing in the podcast world and all of our new ventures as well, that they said, man, we're going to add that on this thing too and talk a little bit about it. So that was a whole lot of fun, and we got to do that on Wednesday. I didn't exactly dress for the part coming here, spending the week in Florida and producing a bunch of wrestling, so I had to make me a little run over to the old men's warehouse and get some decent looking clothes for the civilian work. You're
gonna love the way you look.
Well, you do. And, you know, come see us and say, wait a minute, that's IW Mark's deal. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What are you doing right now? Feel like you're building like a dam for a beaver or something. What are you doing right now?
That's what how did you know?
Well, I don't know.
I tried to be discreet about it, and then it sounded like scratching and kind of like gnawing and
here you
stacking
go.
up wood, right?
So yeah, you know, I mean, I didn't bring my suit or anything.
Okay. The reason I did that, there was in the middle of the Fox business deal. I am sitting in a big control room, but it's also offices all around me. As soon as I go live and I start talking, if you go back and listen to it, you'll hear noises like that and like gunfire going off. And it was some guy off to the right of me popping bubble wrap throughout the whole thing. So I just wanted to give our listeners a little taste of that right at the beginning. That, today as you're listening to that, I thought you'd like it.
I did like it, and I think you're going to like what we're doing this Monday. That's right. A couple days from now, Bruce and I are going to be in Baltimore at Jimmy's Famous Seafood, and you don't want to miss it. This is going to be one of our most interesting shows of all time, and I'm pretty confident about that. First of all, because we have a phenomenal confirmed guest. Secondly, they've got the best crab cakes in the world. And third, we're actually going to watch Monday Night Raw with you, which is something we've never really done before. And I'm looking forward to that because, well, you never know what might happen. So if you haven't already, cruise on over to bruceprichard.com and snag your tickets for Baltimore. It's Monday, May 7th. We're starting a little earlier than normal because we're going to do the live pre-show, I guess you might say, for Monday Night Raw. We're going to do what we do. We've got all new material that Baltimore has never heard before. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And you can pick up your tickets right now. They're on the low for only $35 over at brucepritchard.com. And let's not forget June 16th, we're going to be in Chicago. There's only like a dozen tickets left. You can snag those tickets right now at brucepritchard.com as well. And it just came out, Bruce, this week, that there's like a wrestling podcast convention going on in Chicago over Labor Day weekend. And of course, if they're going to do a wrestling podcast convention, they got to have the two-time podcast of the year there. So you and I are going to be doing our thing in Chicago again for StarCast. You can get more information about that at starcast.com. That's StarCast with 2 R's. This is going to be interesting, is it not? A wrestling podcast convention?
Well, it certainly is, especially when you're the champ and you're going to be there. So you'll have the top 15 podcasts there that you do, and then me.
Well, there you go. I'm not mad at that. And I'm not mad about what we're covering this week. Of course, it's going to be all about the Big Boss Man. If you haven't already, you need to follow us on Twitter just so you can be a part of these conversations, because we have got such an incredible lineup of shows coming your way. Of course, next week is episode 100. And of course, we're not counting our bonus episode. If you haven't already, cruise on over to YouTube and check out our very special Royal Rumble 1992 episode. That's a little bit of a sleeper episode, man, because you weren't there, but we still got to cover so much stuff. I've had a lot of people tell me that Royal Rumble 92, which is at youtube.com/something to wrestle, is in their top 5 episodes for us all time.
Whoa, holy cow. That's just because I didn't know. And I still loved, even as many times as we talked about the simple fact that, folks, I was not there. This is, hearsay and different things that people were Bruce didn't know. Well, no, I didn't know. I wasn't there, but we tried and we did the best that we could do.
Well, we covered a lot of stuff, like the fact that while he was Intercontinental Champion, Bret Hart was negotiating with WCW to show up on WCW TV and take the Intercontinental title. That's not made up. Go check it out. It's youtube.com/something to wrestle. But that episode we didn't count when we were numbering episodes because we didn't release it on the podcast feed. It was just a little something extra for YouTube. So what's coming next week for episode 100? Brother Love.
I love you.
The week after that, the British Bulldog, and then #love to know. And then we're off to the races, man. We're going to have a fun time. And if you haven't already, follow us on Twitter so you can ask some questions, get some updates. It's at Prichard Show. And we're going to go ahead and get ready for the Big Boss Man. Bruce, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's talk about it, man. Ray Traylor, born May 2nd, 1963, right there in Marietta, Georgia. He grew up in the Rome, Georgia area, also home of Arn Anderson. He played football in high school, and then after he graduated, he worked as a prison guard in Cobb County, Georgia. And that might sound familiar to you. But Bruce, when did you first meet Ray Traylor?
The very first time that I met Ray Traylor is when he came up to have his interview with Vince McMahon. I'd seen him on the NWA product as Big Bubba, the bodyguard for Jim Cornette. And big bastard, green as grass. And I think that the jury was out not really knowing, can this guy wrestle, or is he just a big guy that does the bodyguard gig? So no one really knew, but you're going to hear this refrain an awful lot throughout this show. One of the nicest guys you ever wanted to meet and be around.
Yeah, that is sort of the rap on him. I mean, everywhere I've read anything about the Big Boss Man, it was just that he was universally liked and deemed as a good guy. Didn't have a bully bone in his body despite his size, and he's just a fascinating character for me. And one of my favorite characters as a kid was the Big Boss Man. Let's talk about, what's next for Ray Traylor. After working as a prison guard, eventually he meets a fellow named Ted Allen, who he says really didn't teach him anything, but he did start to get him booked as enhancement talent. Did you ever have any dealings or ever hear of Ted Allen?
Yeah, I've heard the name. Never had any dealings with him. I want to say that he was an Atlanta guy down there that used to train guys, but I don't know that he had the best reputation in the world, but I don't know that much about him other than hearing his name for training guys.
Well, of course, Ray Traylor, a pretty big dude, and you don't really see enhancement guys that are that size. It is pretty uncommon, but he notably did jobs for Crockett, for both the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express. And then during a match with Tully Blanchard, when Blanchard hit him with the slingshot suplex, now keep in mind, Ray outweighs him by more than 100 pounds. Dusty noticed how smooth and easy Ray went up for the suplex and thought, man, we got to do something with this guy. As a reminder here, Ray's about 340 pounds when, as an enhancement talent, he takes the slingshot suplex. So Dusty sees something in him and sort of pulls him out of that role. And on May 26, 1986, Ray was repackaged and debuted as Big Bubba Rogers. Big Bubba Rogers is really what sort of put him on the map, Cornette's bodyguard. In that role, which is a role we've seen 1,000 times with 100 different characters, whether it's here or Curtis Hughes or whoever. How did you think Big Bubba Rogers was as a bodyguard?
I thought he was pretty damn good because he no-sold and he was able to keep that just stoned face with the baby faces. He looked like a big, impressive bastard, and he looked like someone you didn't want him to get his hands on you. So the no-sell and the fact that, they threw everything. Dusty breaking the chair over his head is really, to me, the defining moment in Ray Traylor's life, because that's when everybody went, ooh, and looking at him going, holy shit, because everybody sold for Dusty.
So the famous story there is the chair story. I'm sure you remember that, sort of catch everybody up.
Well, they did the whole spot, and Dusty comes in, and Dusty's doing everything he can to Big Bubba Rogers, and Rogers isn't doing anything. Dusty goes out and gets the chair and just breaks it straight over his head, and he doesn't move. He doesn't sell. He doesn't move, doesn't do anything. And that was that moment in time where people went, holy shit, this guy's different. It just made him different because he didn't sell for Dusty, and it was the rest of his life, man, in my opinion, that made people notice.
According to the legend, that was supposed to be a gimmicked chair, and Klondike Bill was supposed to gimmick it. Of course, the guy who we've talked about a lot on Tony Schiavone's podcast, who built the War Games cage and whatnot. Well, he was supposed to gimmick this chair, this wooden chair that was going to be broken over Big Bubba Rogers, but he wouldn't really acknowledge it. Instead, just adjust his hat. Well, Klondike forgot to gimmick the chair, and Dusty clobbered him with it, but Bubba Rogers stood tall and didn't sell it. So that really made him on television. He never got a win over Dusty, but he didn't need to. That made him a made man. And Cornette has gone on record and saying that he really enjoyed trying to pop Ray Traylor on camera because Ray would sort of crack up at some of the silliness that Cornette would spew on TV. And his gimmick is to stand there and be intimidating and not talk. Well, a lot of times you'll see old promos where Ray has to turn his head away from the camera so they won't catch him laughing. Just a lovable dude. Another story that Jim tells is they're going around the Omni in a cab, and they get out and the cab driver puts their bags on the ground. So Bubba leans down to pick the bags up, and the cab driver slams the door on Bubba's fingers. and the door latches shut with his finger stuck inside. So Bubba says to the guy, "Hey brother, the door." And the cab driver quickly opened the door, but Bubba no-sold the entire time. Then he put his hand in his pocket, picked up his bag, and walked into the back door. Jim asked him if he was okay, and as soon as they got in the building, Bubba started to scream in pain. And he asked him why he didn't sell it outside, and Bubba said he couldn't sell it. There were fans watching. His gimmick was, "I'm impervious to pain. I couldn't sell it." You ever hear that story? I mean, these are some legendary stories about a guy who really respected the business.
Yeah, I sure did. And that's the beauty of a guy like Ray Traylor, who was so committed to that character that he was in character if he was out in front of the public. So that's something that is really difficult to instill in somebody, but he already had it. He had it instantly instilled. He got it. And that's a true professional.
Starrcade 86, of course, is one of the big moments a lot of people remember early in his career. We had a scaffold match between the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express. Of course, you know what happens here. Cornette goes up, and when he's going to come down, Bubba's supposed to catch him. Of course, he misses him, and Jim blows out both of his knees. Cornette tells a hilarious story about that.
"Motherfucker, I'll kill him. My baby had to bring me cheeseburgers in bed. Double cheese, double onion, extra mayo, motherfucker."
After the NWA winds up buying out the UWF in 1987, and by NWA, of course, we mean Jim Crockett, Bubba beat his future tag team partner, the One Man Gang, to win the UWF World Title. And on April 17th, 1987, he was the champ. And he wound up losing that belt to Steve Williams on July 11th. And there's lots of legendary stories about, sort of out of the ring acts where people had an interaction with Ray Traylor. And there's a pretty funny one that was talked about in the Observer where Cornette mentioned that he went with his then wife, Bubba, and his wife to a comedy club somewhere in Charlotte. And the comedian is making a series of redneck jokes about a character named Bubba. And then he tries to do some interaction and he sees this big dude in the crowd and he says, "Hey, so what's your name?" And Ray responds, "Bubba." And the act immediately stops. How great is that?
Yeah, you gotta love it. I love it when the comedian gets put in his place a little bit with kind of a rut roll.
Let's get to Starrcade 87. The Midnight Express here are again in a scaffold match, and this time against the Rock and Roll Express. And of course, Cornette is managing their Midnight Express, and that means Ray Traylor's the bodyguard and he's in tow. Well, apparently everybody in the match is paid $10,000. And Bubba, who's also on top of the scaffold working his deal, is only paid $5,000. And he doesn't really feel like that's fair because he could have fallen off just like them. And he feels a little underappreciated by the company. And especially since people had started to say how much better he was getting. Like even in the Wrestling Observer, he was voted the most improved wrestler for 1987. Sooner or later, he starts to have a
And we always based our payoffs on what the Wrestling Observer said too.
Well, I'm just saying he had certainly moved up. I mean, you could not look at him at the end of 87 and not say, boy, this guy has not improved at all. It was quite the opposite. And this is a guy who started with a lot of, sort of raw ability just based on his ability to take that suplex from Tully Blanchard. Anyway, he feels underappreciated, and that leads to talks opening up with the WWF. How did you hear that those conversations began? Who called who? What do you remember?
The story I remember at the time was that Bubba had reached out to Pat Patterson, and I think he reached out through Terry Garvin initially and got to Pat, and they brought him up, wanted to talk to him and see him in person. Came up to the office, and that's where, the love affair began because they just fell in love with him. Was so easy to talk to. He's funny, and they looked at him and they loved that story of being the prison guard in Cobb County, Georgia. So he made contact. Bubba's the one that made contact and reached out, and the rest, as they say, once he got in front of Vince, was history.
So I guess we should talk about, there was an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event in 1985 where Hogan and Andre were wrestling King Kong Bundy and Big John Studd. And during the match, when Hulk tagged Andre, Vince called him the Big Boss Man. So that name had sort of been floating around in one variation or another for a little while. Why did it fit Ray Traylor?
Because when Vince looked at Ray Traylor and he loved the idea of the prison guard and the fact that the guys in prison referred to Ray Traylor as the big boss man because he was the big boss man. He was the one that let him out. He was the one that put him back in. And Vince loved that name. Now, the boss was Andre the Giant. You know, backstage, everyone referred to Andre as boss. Ooh, boss. And that was out of respect. But the fact that these guys had referred to Boss Man as the big boss man, Vince loved that reference. And frankly, didn't really go over all that well with Andre. But Andre wasn't full time at the time, and it was Vince kind of explained it away, and Boss Man was nice enough to be able to win Andre over a little bit. But there was a little nervousness there too because Boss Man's a big guy. I'm boss. So Vince was infatuated with that and loved it.
So, hypothetically, the idea was always to be an evil prison guard. I mean, at this time, I feel like I know the answer, but I just want to sort of have you sort of pitch everybody here. The idea is to have him as a heel rather than as a face. And that almost feels like automatic because of the climate in the company at the time. Would I be fair in saying that?
Well, he was going to be coming in as a heel because he was a big, mean, nasty monster that would be a formidable foe for Hulk Hogan. We were a heel factory. So looking at him and looking at the size and everything else and the way that he can bump around, it's like, oh my God, Boss Man and Hogan, that's a perfect match.
I just think that's sort of automatic at the time. You guys were looking for giants. Before he gets an opportunity there to take on Hogan and make his debut, he does a tour in Japan in April of '88. And then he comes in and signs with the company officially, making his debut on June 1st at a television taping in San Francisco. And his gimmick here is after he would, beat an enhancement guy up, then he'd handcuff him to the rope and then beat him with the nightstick. Where does that idea actually come from, man? That's pretty brilliant.
The idea came from a scene that Hogan had seen on the news of a bunch of people, and the cops had handcuffed them to like railings, the same kind of security railings to hold them there. And the people were fighting the cops, and the cops were just beating them with nightsticks where they were helpless. And that was the vision. That was the vision that they see. But the very first time, the Boss Man was ever on TV was the third time that I had ever done, was the third time that I had appeared on TV, and we brought him out to introduce him on the Brother Love show, which you had basically Slick running the show there because it was my third time. It was Boss Man's first time, and Slick being able to introduce the big boss man, baby. And Ray was just nervous as shit, and he's looking at me, hoping I'm going to carry him through it. And I'm sitting there thinking, I got 5 of these to do tonight, and I'm in the weeds. But it was actually easy, and it was one of the best ones I ever did. And we actually had people coming over the railing for a promo. Think about that, going back into 1988 and going out, 2 guys they had only seen that night for the very first time. And we had them coming over the railings trying to get at Boss Man. Why anybody in their right mind would ever want to do that, I don't know, but they did.
Hey, so let me ask here, and I know this may seem like a silly question, so I can't wait for you to answer. Why was Slick the guy? Don't get me wrong, I love the pairing, and by the way, that was an underrated Slick impression that you did there. But it feels like, Bobby Heenan was sort of on a mission to end Hulkamania. Why was Bobby Heenan not a better fit for the Big Boss Man character than Slick?
I think it was just Bobby had a lot of guys already, thought that Slick would complement him well, and they felt that Slick would also kind of help him with his promos as well, help Boss Man with his promos and bring him along a little bit. Just a different presentation.
He actually gets to work the Milwaukee County Stadium show on July 31st, WrestleFest 88, where he beats Scott Casey. He makes his pay-per-view debut at SummerSlam 88, where he beats Coco Beware. And after that, he starts working a lot of Jim Powers matches on the house shows. But then on September 19th, 1988 in New Haven, Connecticut, that's when he first gets the opportunity to work against Hulk Hogan. Of course, Hulk wins by count out. And it feels like a match made in heaven. What was Hulk so fond of about working with Boss Man in this era?
Because the big bastard bumped his ass off for Hogan. He bumped and he flew for Hogan. He was a perfect foil for Hulk Hogan, that character at that time. And Boss Man could do it all. He made the baby faces look like $1 million. And a baby face like Hulk Hogan, it was just so easy to do. And that was a stereotypical Hulk match that he loved to have. And he was also believable enough that when Boss Man got heat on Hulk, people believed it.
Let's talk a little bit about, and I've always been interested in this, the dynamic of coming from sort of one locker room to another. Now, this was happening a lot in the 80s in the WWF, but was there any sort of weirdness with Traylor, or did he just fit in like peas in a pod right away?
He really fit, other than the guys kind of giving him a hard time about Andre and Andre, gets to you, man, he ain't going to like it. There's only one boss. So they had him wound up pretty good about when Andre's around. But for the most part, Ray is one of those guys. He's a chameleon. He can come in and fit in just about anywhere. And by the end of the night, you're going to be laughing at his shit. And he's, he could own a room, man. He could just walk in and own a room.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty excited about, learning more about his personality, but let's talk a little bit more about wrestling itself. He starts working house shows with Hulk and Ken Patera. And then he does a shot on October 4th against Pork Chop Cash. And I've waited to talk about him a long time here with you, Bruce, because I've always wondered how serious were the discussions about putting the strap on Pork Chop Cash. It feels like you guys were really almost there where you were going to strap the rocket ship to him.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Just tons of conversation. We had the date set and everything. We were going to take him right there at Pork Chop, Tennessee. We were going to have a big show, big stadium show. And it was going to be the first time ever that families were going to be able to bring their farm animals to the shows.
For the rest of October, Boss Man's working.
But the county came in and said no, and so we had to cancel the show. And then Pork Chop got a hangnail and wasn't able to go on any further.
Man, I hate those fucking hangnails. They've ended a lot of careers.
Yeah, you better believe it.
The rest of October, Traylor's working with Hulk, Coco Beware, and Ken Patera on the house shows, always losing to Hulk by count out or disqualification. And on this October 28th edition of Superstars is where we would see Hulk Hogan, or Brother Hulkster, as you like to call him, appear on the Brother Love show. And this is a pretty phenomenal angle. We've talked about this a little bit in our Hogan 88 episode, but catch everybody up. Tell them about this story that really made the Big Boss Man on TV.
Well, the whole idea was for Hogan to reenact the scene that, which is the reason that we had Boss Man handcuffing guys to the ropes where there was nowhere to go and beating them with the nightstick, because Hulk wanted to get to the point of handcuffing him to the railing and Boss Man beating the hell out of him. That was this vision that he saw. He felt it was just so brutal and so violent that he would be helpless. And Boss Man just goes to town, wailing the living shit out of him with that nightstick. So we did it, and we do the whole thing, man. Boss Man comes out, attacks Hogan from behind, takes him down, handcuffs him to the railing, and beats the hell out of him. And Hulk just goes limp. Hulk goes down like a ton of bricks and stays down. And came back. Everybody's high-fiving each other. We're all thinking it's good. And Vince is standing there just not pissed off, but not happy either. So he gets us all together and says, guys, it just didn't work for me. Hulk's laying there like a piece of shit, and he has no comeback. Nobody wants to see that. They don't want to see Hulk in a helpless position like that. And we're looking like, that's what you told us to do. That was the vision. That's how Hulk had this whole thing in his head. So we had to go back and we had to redo the damn thing the next day. And we had to redo it so that after the beating, we did everything just like we did the night before. And we did the beating, except this time Hulk made a comeback and rips the railing and chases us off and chases us all the way to the back. And that's what actually aired. It was from two different buildings on two different nights that you actually saw on TV because Vince wanted Hulk up and not down.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty iconic. I mean, I remember watching this when it happened, and it made an impression on me, and it certainly made the Big Boss Man on TV. So it was a good call. Boss Man has gone on record as saying once he starts working with Hulk, he's pulling in $12,000 a week, sometimes more. That's an insane amount of money, especially in 1988. Was that sort of average or par for course with when you're working on top with Hogan, or were these houses doing better than the others?
Business was good, and the fact that you're on top drawing that money with Hogan, yeah, that's definitely gonna add to it. So it goes back to the theory of I'd rather be in the first match on a Hogan card than in the main event on anybody else's. But if you're in the main event with Hogan, even better.
No doubt about it. He continues to work with Hulk through November on house show matches. Does Vince ever attend any of those early shows, or how is he getting reports that, hey man, these guys are they got it figured out. They're working well together.
We got reports every night from the agents letting us know what was going on in the house shows, but they were also working at TVs as the dark matches a lot of times. So we got to see the chemistry. And of course, when they were in the Northeast, Vince would always see him at the Garden or wherever it was. But also Hulk was singing Big Boss Man's praises all the time, just letting him know that, hey man, the big man's got it and he's doing a hell of a job busting his ass out there.
So as a reminder, he starts with the company on June 1st. He makes his pay-per-view debut just a couple of months later at SummerSlam. Let's get to November 24th in Richfield, Ohio. It's Survivor Series, the very first one. And Boss Man finds himself in his first pay-per-view main event. He's teaming with his future partner, Akeem, Haku, Red Rooster, and Ted DiBiase against Hogan, Savage, Hillbilly Jim, Coco Beware, and Hercules. Boss Man would eliminate Coco, and then he was counted out while handcuffing Hulk to the ropes. Hulk and Randy, of course, go on to win the match, and we talked about that on our Mega Powers episode. I mean, this is one really, really quick rise to the top of the company here. Did you ever have a conversation with Ray in these early years here about, what it meant for him to sort of go from just a bodyguard character with the other show, and now here, in short order, he's working on top with Hogan. Now he's got pay-per-view main events. What an ascent. Well, yeah, going from the NWA and then coming up, and let's back up even a little bit more. I don't even know if you've got it in your notes. One of the things that made Boss Man 2 was before, he ever came out, we did vignettes on Boss Man, and the vignettes that we did, I took him to a prison in Danbury, Connecticut, that was a maximum security prison. We were able to get clearance, and it was one of the just kind of spookiest damn things that I'd ever been in, because obviously I'd never been in prison. Ray walks in and is like, hey, you want to see what we used to do? And we're going down, and I've got him doing all the stereotypical asshole prison guard scenarios you can think of, running the stick down the bars as he walks down and cutting promos on everybody. And we had live prisoners in the prison, but they were a little bit away from us. They weren't in the cells at the time that we were doing the shoot, but they could hear us and they could see us from afar.
And I got to tell you, man, being in a prison and that deep into a prison is an eerie feeling if you've never been there. And he was totally at ease and just totally in charge. But, man, he also knew how to get the heat with the prisoners. He knew how to get them riled up. And I thought, wow, this guy has never cut a promo before. He's walking in here and he picked it up right away. You know, we didn't do scripts. This was just me cutting promos for him and saying, hey, try this. You know, you're going to serve hard time. And found, you know, short little bites were better for him. But those vignettes, in my opinion, also helped with that character so much when he first came in. Because people knew who he was, they knew the agenda, and he was easy to hate as well.
You know, I'm glad that you said that, because I do feel like people overlook those boss man vignettes. And, you know, people always talk about the Mr. Perfect ones. They always talk about the $1 Million Man ones. These are sort of overlooked, though. When you guys are down here shooting that, you know, what's the word that you get back to Vince, or when does Vince see them? What's his reaction to these original boss man vignettes?
Well, I called him from the prison and he's like, how's it going? I said, I love him. I loved him because he was so damn young and so raw that we had a lot to work with. And he didn't have any preconceived ideas. He was open to our interpretation of what the character was, but he picked it up instantly. And I could give him a promo and he would go, all right, and then go do it. And for a producer, shit, man, that's gold all day long. And he was just good at it and picked it up pretty damn quick.
Well, let's remind everybody that Hulk is still in love with him. So after Survivor Series, he's still working with Hogan. Let's fast forward to January 4th, 1989. And this is the first time we would see Bossman and Akeem team up as the Twin Towers, and they would beat Alan Reynolds and Chris Collins in an enhancement match. So chat me up here. You guys are doing really well on the house show loops with Hogan and Bossman on top. They're going well because they've been together for a while at this point. Why is the decision made to team him with Akeem here?
Well, because we needed to form the Mega Powers team of Hogan and Savage, and we needed someone for them to work with getting to that breakup. The Mega Powers explode. Bossman was already working with Hogan, and Akeem, another big bastard. It was two big monster heels to stick in the ring with the Mega Power babyface team. It was just natural. It just was easy to do. And it was a progression because of the boss man angle that was already in progress.
You guys don't abandon ship on the house shows though. I mean, he's still working with Hogan there. Let's get to the Royal Rumble, January 15th, 1989. He comes in at number 22 and he and Akeem eliminate Hulk. And then Hulk pulls the big boss man out from under the ropes, and then boss man never re-enters the ring. And the match, of course, is won by Big John Studd. And we covered that Royal Rumble match a little bit on our Mega Powers episode. He has a one-off with Big John Studd on a house show on January 29th. But really, we're trying to get to the main event on NBC, and we've covered this in great detail. The show does an amazing 11.6 rating. It's the third highest wrestling show in modern wrestling history. I mean, it's just crushing in the ratings here. It's the famous bump where Macho Man takes a tumble on top of Elizabeth, and Akeem took that massive bump from the ring to the floor. February 4th in Anaheim. This is the first time we see Bossman wrestle Hulk Hogan in a steel cage match, and it breaks the record at the arena with more than 18,000 fans in attendance for $189,000 gate. This breaks all records there in Anaheim, including a record that was set by Flair and Brody years before. This cage match is a regular attraction for you guys. You do it pretty routinely after this, including 3 consecutive nights, the 17th, 18th, and 19th. And Tony Schiavone has gone on record as saying his most favorite wrestling memory, his favorite match to call, was Madison Square Garden and the Boston Garden, where you guys did a cage match with Hulk Hogan and the Big Boss Man in the same day. And even, despite all the craziness that he had seen in WCW and Jim Crockett Promotions, that is Tony Schiavone's favorite wrestling memory. What was so magic about Boss Man Hogan in the big blue cage?
It was just that classic big man match, and the big boss man, for a guy his size to be taking those bumps off of the cage. And he was taking those big, huge bumps off the top rope and off of the cage into the ring. And that was especially, in the WWE at the time, the big guys, man, they didn't take that kind of bumps. They didn't move like that. And Boss Man moved like a junior heavyweight when he wanted to. So he was a big, huge man that could move, and he could go with anybody. So that made it unique. And it was just magic, those two guys in the ring, because Boss Man made Hogan look like $1 million in there.
Let's talk about February 24th, South Bend. The Ultimate Warrior beats the Big Boss Man, and then he's back to working with Hulk through February and March. How did Boss Man enjoy working with Warrior?
I don't think anybody enjoyed really working with Warrior, but he took it as he's moving on, and that he was going to be going on to get this guy over now. And the push was on to, everybody knew, hey, Warrior's probably going to be the next guy, and Vince was grooming him. Vince had high hopes for Warrior. So if Boss Man can make Hogan look as good as he did, maybe Boss Man can do that same magic for the Ultimate Warrior. April
2nd is WrestleMania 5, and the Twin Towers get the win over the Rockers here. One of my favorite moments in wrestling is this Akeem lariat on Shawn Michaels. Still, never gets old to me. What did Ray think of his first WrestleMania? I mean, this is something he had seen sort of from afar in the wrestling business for a few years, and now he's smack dab in the middle of it. What did it mean to him to be involved at WrestleMania?
Yeah, I think everybody that, your first time at Mania is a huge thrill, just the entire spectacle of it all. Whether you are a member of the audience or it's your first time to perform, it's your first time to see it, it's just a huge spectacle. So I think he was in awe coming from the NWA, that a lot of this, in the big houses and the big paydays, night after night after night, that was something that was pretty damn awe-inspiring that he was impressed with. But it's a special day. It's definitely a special day to be able to work WrestleMania.
So let's talk a little bit about timing, because I'm always fascinated with that aspect in wrestling, especially, if he'd come in a couple of years prior, it might not have been much different, because the stage was already set for Andre and Hogan to be on top. Here, of course, nobody else is considered. They've already got this mega power story sort of rolling. The following year, they're going to do something pretty special with the Ultimate Warrior. It just feels like if Boss Man had been around, maybe in early 86, he could have been in that Bundy spot at WrestleMania too, could he not? I mean, it feels like they were better matches. It's a natural opponent for Hogan, but the timing sort of prevented him from ever headlining a pay-per-view like a SummerSlam, a WrestleMania, a Royal Rumble. I mean, obviously he had, the big tag match at Survivor Series, but it's not quite the same as it being one-on-one on top of a pay-per-view with Hulk Hogan. Would you agree that the timing is maybe the reason that didn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, if he had come in earlier and been in the same place in his career, then that definitely could have happened. But again, that's the business. So I think that some of the things that did happen because of the timing with, like Hogan and the vision of these people getting the shit beat out of them, those real world events may have helped his trajectory as well. So the timing for him coming in when he did and being able to utilize that was something that was able to give us an idea to help him for the rest of his career.
Well, it was probably a pretty big deal to him too. As much as, we talk about what a big moment it is to be at WrestleMania, and it is a huge event and a great honor. Main eventing against Hulk Hogan on Saturday night's main event on April 25th for the world title inside of a steel cage. That's got to be the career highlight, does it not? I mean, being in that many homes, on top, world title match on NBC, that's a big damn deal. And it seemingly puts an end to the Hulk Hogan Boss Man feud, even on the house shows. Why was this sort of the blow off moment?
Well, it was a blow-off moment just because, I mean, it was the time. Vince always had to have a start and a finish for angles. So this was where he wanted to do it, and Hulk was moving on, and it was time to end the angle. But I'll tell you a story about this match and what went on, because we would tape Saturday night's main event, and we would then bring the tapes back to Stanford, and we would edit the matches and everything and put the package show together before it would air on NBC. This particular match, I had actually sat in on the ISO edit. The ISO edit is where you have all of your cameras and they're all isolated and they're all on tape, and then you go back and you cut the match. And I get a phone call in my office from Vince McMahon, who is livid that Dave Meltzer has contacted USA Today and several other newspapers and has told them that he will expose Big Boss Man and Hulk Hogan and Big Boss Man cutting himself in Saturday night's main event. And he's going to show everybody how they do it and all this shit, right? So Vince is screaming at me going, how in the hell did Dave Meltzer get a copy of Saturday night's main event ahead of time? And second of all, how in the hell, if you ISO'd this match, did that get in? I said, Vince, I guarantee you, because I saw it. I saw it in the ISO. I know where Boss Man got his color. And I said, that's out. I said, there's not even a remote shot of it. There's not even a shot from the back. It's gone. It's completely gone. And he says, well, he says he's got it. And I said, it never left our studio, Vince. There was no way for him to have a copy of it. But Meltzer in his infinite wisdom, NBC had sent out like pieces of the match for advertisers and stuff, and had done I guess they had done an ad, and one of the shots that they used, you see Ray grabbing his head, and Meltzer, being the expert, is like, right there, he's got a razor blade in his hand and he's cutting his head, and that's what he was going to use. I said, Vince, if that's what he's going to use, then if you really want to be an asshole, I said, man, I'll go back and show you, where he did get it. He ain't getting it there. So the blade's already gone. It's already been disposed of. There's not even a blade to be had. But yet the expert was telling everybody in the newspaper for the big expose, he's going to show you how they do it. And tell you about the secret. The wrestling is not real. And, we contemplated showing it just to expose him for what a fraud he is. That he just doesn't know what he's talking about, folks. Obviously, we didn't do that, but God, that day, and having to bring everything over to Vince's office to show him, no, this is what it was. This is what went out, and we are the only ones that have ever had control of these tapes. So NBC didn't even get that, and that was a day out of my life of just having to deal with nonsense, bullshit, rumor, and innuendo.
Well, that's a pretty fun story. I appreciate you sharing that. I couldn't help but think when you started talking about the tape that you were going to talk about like Cytexing Hogan's hair, which is something we had talked about before.
No, we don't Cytex on video. We just had to shoot from the side and from down. That was the editing that had to be done there. And this was the match too. Because Vince was like, why did it take so long? When I explained it to him, thank you for bringing that up. Because that was the other thing out of it, was that he says, why did it take so long? I said, Vince, we can't show the top of his head. What do you mean you can't show the top of his head? I said, you told me you didn't ever want to see the top of his head. God damn it, Bruce, he's bald. I'm like, really? Gosh, we didn't know that. And then the comment came up about spending $10,000 Cytex and hair on his head for a mag. What? And then he's learning that how we painstakingly edited the matches so that you didn't see the top of his head as much as possible. And that mandate went out the window, same match, because he got to see it all. And he understands the process, but Vince was always one like when computers came out. God damn, how hard is it? You put you type your shit in there, you mash a button, bam, a format comes out. Well, you actually have to program that deal, and somebody has to enter the information in the right way so that it comes out formatted that way. But hey,
well,
it's all good.
Let me just say, it's easier to keep the hair you have rather than replace the hair you've lost. And you can take it from 4hims.com, a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, sexual wellness for men. With medical grade solutions, real doctors, and well-known generic equivalents to those name brand prescriptions that can keep you with your hair, 4hims.com offers men easier, more affordable access to the prescriptions, products, and medical advice they need. These are not herbal supplements. These are prescription solutions backed by science. There's no waiting room. There's no awkward doctor's visits. Save hours by going to 4hims.com, just answering a few quick questions. Then a doctor will review and can prescribe you. Everything will be sent directly to your door. It doesn't get any easier than this.
No, and don't wait, guys, because if you're starting to get a little bit of a receding hairline, you start to see that it's going a little bit, man, check it out right now at 4hims.com, because if you do it right now, our listeners get a trial month of everything you need to keep your hair for just $5 today. Right now, while supplies last. Go see the website for full details. This could cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or pharmacy. Go to 4hims.com/WWE. That's FORHIMS.com/WWE. 4hims/WWE. And do it now.
4hims.com/WWE. Let's start winning over thinning, guys. Hook it up, man. You're going to be glad you did. Support our sponsors, and especially if you got a little bit of that Hulk Hogan action going on. Nobody wants to spend $10,000 on Cytexing. Spend a couple of bucks at 4hims.com/WWE. So let's talk about what's next for the Boss Man after this Hulk Hogan match. The Twin Towers start working house shows against Demolition, and they do that for all of April, May, June, and July. Pretty good match on paper. Was there ever any consideration to giving these guys a title run here as a tag team?
There was talk about it, because who the hell's going to beat them?
Right.
Then that came up right there. Who the hell's going to beat them? So they were good attraction, or good heel tag team, but let's keep it where it is.
Well, I can't argue with that. But one of the things I've looked forward to talking about was August 4th. This is when the Big Boss Man loses a match to Dusty Rhodes by DQ, and it's their very first match in the WWF. And it's pretty cool to see him working here, especially knowing that Dusty sort of gave Ray his break in the NWA, which eventually enabled him to get this gig with the WWF. And of course, Boss Man actually beats Dusty here. What was their working relationship like here in the WWF? Did they have some sort of special kinship because of the past, or was there a little bit of heat there over the way Boss Man left?
Initially, I think that there was a little bit of trepidation on Ray's part, but at the same time, Ray's a big old country boy. It was hard to get him mad, and definitely hard to keep him mad. So Dusty coming in, Dusty did give him his first break. And I think in Dusty's head, Dusty kind of felt like, I got an idea, baby. Maybe we're going in here and we recreate the Big Bubba Rogers, the American Dream scenario, if you will. And that was Dusty's vision. Dusty's vision was that he was going to go out and this was his opportunity to slaughter the Big Boss Man. Vince's vision was one of, okay, Dusty and Boss Man, this is my opportunity to get Boss Man back over. He's gone around and worked with Hogan, and now we're going to put him with Dusty. They did have chemistry, and I thought that it was it was a match made in heaven, and it felt good. But they did have chemistry, and I don't want to say that Dusty went out there and ate him up. Dusty made him look good because it was one of his creations. And in Dusty's mind, Boss Man was his.
I mean, it's hard to argue, really. SummerSlam 89, we see Demolition and King Duggan beat Andre the Giant and the Twin Towers. What a team this is. Andre the Giant, Big Boss Man, and the one-man gang all on the same team. Any memories of this August 89 six-man tag here?
Oh, boss. Just being, Ray being a little nervous over the whole incident and everything with being in the ring with the boss. And I think guys, including Andre, would bring up who the real boss was and just let him know. But there was always a little trepidation there as well, because you didn't know which Andre you were going to get waking up that day.
Through September, October, and November, Dusty beat the Big Boss Man in all the house show matches, and that took us to Survivor Series on November 23rd. There we would see Boss Man team with Bad News Brown, Rick Martel, and the Honky Tonk Man against Dusty Rhodes, Brutus, the fucking Barber, Beefcake, Red Rooster, and Tito Santana. In the match, Boss Man eliminates Rooster, and then Dusty pins Big Boss Man with a cross body block to eliminate him and win the match. The main event, of course, goes down Saturday night's main event. That is on November 25th. We see Dusty beat Boss Man again. How big of a deal is this for Dusty to be on Saturday night's main event? I mean, it had become the hottest show in all of wrestling, right?
Baby, it's funky like a monkey, feeling good, because it's the only place the dream should have been on top. On national TV for everybody, broadcast TV for everybody to get a experience, a little bit of Stardust, if you will.
No doubt about it. They start to do a ball and chain match in December with Dusty and Boss Man. Chat me up. How did you first hear about a ball and chain match?
Vince was looking for something visual for Boss Man to do and to have, and another gimmick other than the nightstick. And so this ball and chain deal came out where he would carry around the old, I was talking about your wife, the old ball and chain, and in prison, you hook a guy up to the chains and got a ball dragging him around. How far is he going to run? So we made up our own damn ball and chain, which consisted of a bowling ball with the chain cemented into it. And he would drop it on his opponents and use it in matches. And it's a nice little gimmick. Kind of hard to work with sometimes.
They worked these ball and chain matches for the rest of 1989 on the house shows. Let's get to January 29th, 1990. We see Boss Man work his first match with Bret Hart. And a month later, on February 24th, on that edition of Superstars, DiBiase has a match against Jake Roberts, and Boss Man attacks Jake, then handcuffs him to the ropes and steals Damien because the belt was in the bag with him. And after the beatdown, they walk to, of all places, the Brother Love show set where you're ready and waiting for him. And after DiBiase talks to Slick about how he paid them both good, Boss Man apparently knew nothing about that. And DiBiase then demands that the Big Boss Man reach his hand into the bag and get the belt. And after DiBiase accuses Big Boss Man of being scared to put his hand in, Boss Man has a few choice words for him and then takes the belt out of the bag, shows it to DiBiase, and says he's going to have to get it back the old-fashioned way. He's going to have to earn it. So he puts the belt back into the bag, goes to the ring, and gives Jake the key to uncuff himself and gives him the bag. So sort of out of the blue here, after a pretty phenomenal run as a heel, you guys turned Boss Man babyface on the Brother Love show. Chat me up.
Well, first of all, Ray Traylor was so damn easy to like as a human being, and he was so funny backstage, and arguably one of the most likable guys in the locker room. And it's like, they love him so much back here, they'll love him out there. Let's turn him babyface. And everybody thought at first, because the gimmick, the Big Boss Man, was so strong, and he was just such an easy heel. Nobody's going to buy that. But they did, and he was able to pull it off, and we were able to tell that story of, there's a good Boss Man. There's a big boss man, but there's a good boss man too. And it worked.
On the February 26th edition of Superstars, Jake Roberts and Bossman are on your show, and they leave, but Bossman comes back and then handcuffs you to the railing, and then he unlocks you, takes you down to the ring, picks you up, and does the atomic drop, slams you on your back, and then he takes the old ball and chain and drops it across your stomach. What do you remember about this?
I would take that beating from Boss Man, that ball and chain, and everything that you just explained there physically 10 times a day, double it all up on Sunday than I would ever to take an Ultimate Warrior clothesline again in my life. It was piece of cake. And for him to get his hands on me, guys didn't get their hands on me a whole lot at that time. After Hogan did, Randy very little bit. But Doug it a little bit. That was a big deal for Boss Man, and it was just a piece of cake, just light as a feather.
On March 8th, Boss Man is working in a steel cage with Rick Rude, and then through the rest of February, we're going to see Boss Man teaming with Hulk to beat Mr. Perfect and the Genius on house shows. I guess the thinking here is, they were good versus evil, but now that they're both good guys, got to put them together, right?
Exactly. And now now it's a buddy cop movie.
March 19th, we see Bossman and Hulk beat the Powers of Pain, and then they do a double shot on March 23rd. Both times, whether they're in South Bend or Auburn Hills, it's Bossman and Rude in cage matches. March 24th is different though. It's Hulk and Bossman beating Andre the Giant and Haku. Had things sort of simmered down with Andre and Big Boss Man and all that sort of backstage rumor and innuendo by this point?
Well, and again, it never heated up because Boss Man immediately, had made it right with Andre. But Andre knew that the boys liked to stir it. Ray knew the boys liked to stir it. So they pretty much were almost working the boys to think that there was even more animosity than there was. And Andre was over it because he saw that Ray was just a big, nice guy.
Let's talk about WrestleMania 6. Of course, we've covered this in long form on our archives at somethingtowrestle.com. April 1st, Bossman beats Akeem in like a minute 50. Why was this match so short here?
Just timing purposes, not really having enough time for it. And, the other thing about it to me was the Twin Towers, I thought were a great tag team and that they had done an awful lot together. For me, I just felt that we should have gone back to the Akeem Boss Man scenario and shot an angle and done something more with them because they were two big guys that could go. And I just would have liked to have seen more of a singles issue with them after a while.
April 13th, you guys did this wrestling summit. I know we've talked about this briefly before, but I want to mention it again. It's over in Japan. It's WWF, All Japan, and New Japan all working together. And on this card, Jake Roberts would beat the Big Boss Man. Both of these guys are faces. Why did the match happen? What do you remember about this wrestling summit?
Well, they were faces in our world, and we were working with the All Japan, New Japan, and all those guys. The feeling was that for the Japanese audience, they remembered the Big Boss Man himself as a heel. The television that they had at the time, he was a heel. So they wanted to keep them in the roles that they felt that the Japanese public knew. And the wrestling fans there are a lot more educated than most. I mean, they follow everything. So I think it was a little weird for them too.
Let's talk about Saturday night's main event. April 28th, Bossman beats Akeem by DQ. At this point, Bossman's been featured so much. Is being in a featured spot on Saturday night's main event sort of feeling like old hat?
I would hope it would never be old hat for anybody, but yeah, I mean, I think he was a top guy here, man, and he was still at that run where you could put him on top and you knew what you had. And it's time for that roller coaster ride to take place, but at the same time, it's still good right now. All the greatest gimmick in the world, and that everybody has the world by the balls. And this digs deep. It's kind of the DVD version of Something to Wrestle With. So It's definitely worth the price of admission, and you can get it on DVD right now wherever the hell they sell DVDs, and trust me, it's worth your time.
You've probably seen, some clips for this, or maybe even purchased the movie on Amazon, on iTunes. Go check out The Price of Fame. You'll be glad you did. So, they're going to keep this going through April, May, June, July, and August. It's going to be Bossman DiBiase on all those house shows. DiBiase finally picks up a win on the last house show of the Loop, which is August 23rd by DQ. So you guys are pretty consistent here for 5 months with those guys. What was it about DiBiase and Bossman that Vince really loved so much?
Their chemistry and their great matches. And we did, again, talking about some of the great vignettes that we did. We had gone down to help solidify Ray. We used the vignettes to show what an asshole he was as a prison guard. So we wanted to do vignettes on the flip side to let everybody know that, hey, maybe we didn't get the full picture the first time. So the idea was one of going down, and Ted DiBiase was going to take us to Cobb County, Georgia, to show us what a real piece of trash that the Big Boss Man was. And DiBiase was going to go down. He was going to interview the prison guard, and the prison guard was going to talk about how Boss Man used to get beat up by the prisoners, and they all hated him, and we had to fire him, and we had to do this. He was going to go back and talk to the Big Boss Man's high school football coach. He said, yeah, I remember Big Boss Man had 2 left feet. He couldn't. Boy, every time that we'd have a drill with the tackling dummy always won. Ha, ha, ha. Just hokey, over the top, that the Boss Man is the worst human being on the face of the earth. Then Gene Okerlund would go down, and Gene was like, I'm looking for the Big Boss Man's high school principal or coach. This guy walks out. He goes, sir, could you direct me? He goes, I'm the head coach here. He says, well, no, I'm looking for so-and-so. He says, yeah, that's me. And he says, well, can I show you something? And we had like a little video thing set up there. He goes, I don't know who the hell that is, but I've been the head coach here for the last 15 years. Did you know the Big Boss Man? And he goes on to tell glowing reports about the Big Boss Man. He was the best. He played both ways. He was my right tackle. He was my left tackle. He was this, he was that, and talks about how great he is. Then we'd go to the prison, and the warden would talk about that, the prisoners loved him. He was compassionate, and he was able to help guys. He would read to the prisoners at night, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that happened when we went down to shoot this stuff, I had it laid out where I had the cooperation of the Cobb County Sheriff's Department, and I had a meeting with folks in the prison where Ray actually was a prison guard in the Cobb County Jail. So I go down, and as we're driving into the jail, there were actual chain gangs on the side of the road picking up trash. You've seen it down in Alabama and down south. They still had chain gangs. This is 1980s or whatever. So we get there, and with another production guy, and we're talking, and he looks at our cards, and it was a scene out of a movie, because the warden's office was in the center of the jail, 3 stories down. Okay, so you had to go down into a basement, three floors down, and his office was right in the middle. And he's looking at our cards. It's Stamford, Connecticut. It's up there near New York. The guy I was with was very New Yorkish and Yankee. And then and I knew that this guy is not really going to be our friend. And I put on I'm from Texas. I'm from down south. And he's just staring down. This other guy says, I bet y'all think that we still got chain gangs down here the way y'all like to portray in your wrestling. And we look at each other like, you do have chain gangs down here. We just passed one on the way in. And he starts telling us about how he hates how we have portrayed Ray. He hates how we have portrayed the South. He hates how we portrayed all this shit. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not getting my shoot here. I'm going to have to go to plan B. I just want to get the hell out of Dodge because we're 3 stories down in a prison. And I start to wrap the meeting up. And the guy that I'm with says, well, sir, I don't understand your apprehension. We've talked to the sheriff's department, and they're willing to cooperate with us fully. Well, they've even given us uniformed officers and patrol cars, and we've even got one of them that's agreed to take a bribe on camera. My face drops. Because all I wanted to do was get the hell out of there, go secure my Cobb County Sheriff's Department, and pretend like this meeting never happened. We didn't have cell phones then. We get back to the hotel, which was about a 2-minute drive, and I go in the hotel, and I'm looking at my thing. My red light is already beeping. I get the message, and it was the sheriff from the sheriff's department. And I call him, and I say, hey, man, how you doing? Yeah, I just want to make sure we're all good. He goes, Bruce, is there a problem with the warden? I said, no, we just left there, man. Had a good meeting. I'm not sure we're going to shoot over there, but I'd like to get you guys first thing in the morning and get this thing. He says, yeah, I got to call him back. He called pretty upset. I didn't take his call. I wanted to talk to you first. And this guy called, man, and called the mayor and everything and got us basically shit canned from using the sheriff's department, the everything. And I had to call Vince and say, hey, I lost the sheriff's department and I lost the jail. We had to get actors in. We had to get police cars in, all kinds of shit. But I actually had the sheriff's department in Cobb County willing to take a bribe from Ted DiBiase on camera in uniform. And it all got blown up. Just blew up right in my face, and not a whole lot I could do about it. But those were fun. We went to Ray's house and interviewed his mom and his friends, and then DiBiase had this old woman that was his mom and friends. It was just good shit, but it gave you the character, and it made the boss man even more personable and made him that likable babyface character. You're from New York, so you know how you people think of people from New York City, Conrad.
You people, listen to you. So he winds up replacing Tugboat in Hulk's corner at SummerSlam. And this, of course, happens when Hogan is taking on Earthquake. Why was the change made here?
Wouldn't you? Oh, yeah, it was the Tugboat experiment was at that point. I think Vince had deemed, I don't think this is going to happen. So he was ready to kind of change directions on Tugboat. So it was a pretty quick fix. Well, who else can go in there? Babyface, boss man.
He also started to noticeably slim down and lose a bunch of weight around this time. Is this something he was doing on his own, or had Vince requested that he shed a few pounds?
Bubba had some knee problems, and one of the suggestions for the knee problems was surgery or lose weight. And Vince was big on him losing weight as well. And he went on that damn diet and started working out even more so, doing a lot more cardio. Got that weight off of his knee and was feeling better. So it was a mandate of an injury to feel better and then look better at the same time. So
he starts working on a few house shows with Tugboat to beat Dino Bravo and Earthquake. And Earthquake actually beats him on September 13th. But the next day in Grand Rapids, he wins a 14-man battle royal. Through most of October, he's beating the Barbarian on house shows. And then we're going to get to the October 29th match before Superstars, where we see Big Boss Man beat Bobby Heenan. Now they're doing this because around this time is when we started to see Bobby insulting Big Boss Man's mother on TV. What's the thinking in sort of getting this feud started that way?
It was an accident. It was an accident because Bobby was on Primetime and, of course, on Wrestling Challenge. We had been doing the vignettes with DiBiase, and we used his real mother on the vignettes, and Heenan just was merciless. It was with the Bobby Heenan insults and doing what Bobby did best. So it became a point of contention. Is how the hell do you ignore it? And Boss Man finally got to confront Bobby, and it was just a natural that we could have the Bobby matches and go on from there. But it was organic. It was an accident that took on a life all unto itself.
Through November, Boss Man's working a lot with Barbarian and even against Bobby on a few house shows. And I found this sort of interesting in my notes. On November 20th, Boss Man beat Mike Durham. And Durham will, of course, go on later to be known as Johnny Grunge from Public Enemy. Let's get to Survivor Series. November 22nd, we see Boss Man teaming with Hulk Hogan instead of across the ring from him. Also on that team is Jim Duggan and Tugboat to take on Earthquake, Haku, Dino Bravo, and the Barbarian. Boss Man eliminates Haku and then is eliminated by Earthquake himself. This feels like Hulk Hogan and his super friends here, does it not?
It is Hulk Hogan and his super friends, and by God, all they needed were capes. And if you look at, and seriously, if you look at the picture on the Survivor Series poster and the way Hulk's posed, he's got the big lat spread and everything. I swear you can envision him in a cape. Just saying. And I remember making the comment one time, like, it looks like he's wearing a cape just because of the way that he's posed. It was kind of funny.
Let's talk about the ball and chain match with Bobby Heenan. They start to do this as a house show attraction. What did Bobby think of these ball and chain matches?
He enjoyed working with Boss Man because Boss Man never hurt him. So it was a night off, and it was a way for Bobby to kind of get out and be on the road a little bit and have some matches. But he enjoyed working with Boss Man because Boss Man never hurt him.
So
that was a good night.
January 13th and 18th, Mr. Perfect gets a couple of wins over Boss Man, defending his Intercontinental title. And that gets us to the 19th, where we go to Royal Rumble. Boss Man pins the Barbarian in 14 minutes. I can't believe that's a real thing. Meltzer didn't hate it, though. He gave it 2 3/4 stars. That's a seemingly really long match for Boss Man and Barbarian, but pretty high praise from Dave. How was Vince feeling about Boss Man here? If you look at the cards, it starts to feel like he's floundering a little bit compared to the way he started.
Well, he's also, he's not working with Hulk Hogan, so I guess it can be viewed that way, but he's being groomed to be a good character babyface, and Barbarian was one of Bobby Heenan's guys, so he had a great story that was heavily featured because of Bobby's involvement in Primetime and Challenge on the commentary side. Barbarian was one of Bobby's guys, and it was they worked well together. So they were good matches, and Vince was starting to feel that, man, this Boss Man character is a strong character.
January 26th is the very first time the Undertaker works with the Big Boss Man. Undertaker gets the win, and through the rest of February, Boss Man's working against Haku, Earthquake, Heenan, and Bravo on the house shows. In early March, he is beating Mr. Perfect by DQ and countout, but of course that allows Perfect to retain his Intercontinental title. He gets a win over the Berserker on March 14th. Bruce, what's your favorite Berserker match?
I loved them all, by God.
March 15th and 16th, they're even doing double shots here. It's on all 3 cards. Boss Man and Roberts against DiBiase and Perfect. And that gets us to WrestleMania 7, which we've covered in long form in our archives. SomethingToWrestle.com. It's March 24th in Los Angeles, California. We see Big Boss Man beat the Mr. Perfect character by DQ in about 11 minutes. Meltzer didn't hate it, but we've got sort of a schmoz at the end with lots of interference, including Andre the Giant, Haku, Barbarian, 2.5 stars. Was there ever any consideration to actually putting the Intercontinental title here on Big Boss Man?
There was talk about it, but it was Vince really, like Curt is the champion. The whole reason that Curt and Boss Man were even working here was they were friends in real life, and they got along so well out of the ring that they always talked about their matches and always talked about how well they do in the ring. And they did. They made magic when they got in the ring. So it was pretty cool shit. But Vince, now at this point, Vince wasn't looking to put the title on him here because of where he saw Perfect going with the title later on.
One of your last nights with the company here is Saturday night's main event on April 15th. Boss Man is in a battle royal that's ultimately won by Mr. Perfect on that Saturday night main event. But then through May and June, they hook up Boss Man and Mountie on all the house shows. I know you weren't there for that, so we'll skim through a lot of this. That summer on June 17th, Boss Man gets a win over a very young Louis Spicoli, and they do another Wrestle Fest, this time in St. Louis at Busch Stadium. You'd see Boss Man and Animal beat the Mountie and the Nasty Boys. And we start to see Boss Man teaming with LOD full time against the Mountie and Nasty Boys for a couple of shots. And that gets us to SummerSlam 91. On the way here, it had been mostly Boss Man and Mountie working through the house shows. And they're going to do a gimmick match here where the loser has to spend the night in jail. It's a pretty tremendous concept for a 10-year-old version of me. I absolutely loved this. They do see the Mountie get thrown into jail. He goes to the paddy wagon. The match only gets a star and a half. I know you weren't there, but you got to watch it. I can't wait to get your thoughts about it.
You know, it sounds like a Vince McMahon idea. That's something that he would love to see, that over-the-top reactions and just, what if we put him in prison? I love it. So I don't really know where it all came from, but I imagine it was Vince, because that definitely sounds like a Vince idea. I died. They go to prison. I love it in New York City. Who would want to do that? So good stuff. But I did see it, and it was a little hokey.
I loved it. You know, I hope everybody goes and watches it this week. It's one of my favorite moments in wrestling. I can't even really explain why. They do the Battle Royal in October of 91, the Royal Albert Hall in London, England. Pretty fun match if you can find it. I think it's on one of the Coliseum video releases they just posted. I guess we should sort of skip around here since you weren't really here. We'll mention briefly that they go to the Survivor Series on November 27th, 1991 in Detroit. There we would see the Legion of Doom team with the Big Boss Man to beat IRS and the Natural Disasters. And just before the show, Jack Tunney announced that Jake Roberts is going to be pulled from the main event to even up the sides. And that's a pretty controversial decision. We're going to go back and cover that sometime in long form as a bonus show. But since Bruce wasn't there, we'll just skip around, I guess. Boss Man finishes out 91 and early 92, working with IRS on the house shows. Royal Rumble 1992 is what's up next, and we just covered that in the archives. You can check it out over on YouTube. Somethingtowrestle.com will get you there. WrestleMania 8, the next major show. Hopefully we get to cover that as a bonus show at some point in the future. They do sort of a big tag team match here where we get Virgil and Boss Man teaming with Duggan and Sergeant Slaughter to beat the Nasty Boys, Repo Man, and the Mountie. And Ray Combs of the Family Feud does the ring announcing, which is sort of fun. The match is not well received. It only gets a quarter star in the Wrestling Observer. Boss Man is working almost exclusively with the Berserker on house shows after this, when all of a sudden, here's what I was looking for. We start to see promos from Nails, who would claim that the Big Boss Man had been abusive to him when he was a prison guard, and now he's out and he's coming for revenge. So on the May 30th Superstars, Nails attacks Boss Man, cuffing him to the top rope and beating him with the nightstick. Now, this allows Boss Man to take some time off in storyline because he was quote unquote hurt from the attack. And he returns in July, beating Nails by DQ on a house show in East Rutherford, New Jersey. This is one of the more famous storylines of Boss Man's run, his feud with Nails. Did you meet Nails? Did you ever have any interaction with him? What can you tell us about Nails?
First time I ever met Nails was he was the Viking working for Bill Watts, and his name was Kevin Kelly in the AWA. Real name Kevin Walkalts, but he had come down and Bill was billing him as the Viking for a while, and then I think we changed it to Kevin Kelly. I don't even remember, but he was a unique guy. Kind of kept to himself, and not the nicest guy in the world, not somebody you really wanted to gravitate to and hang around. Wasn't, as Vince McMahon used to say, a people person. But I had very limited dealings with Kevin Wachholtz through the years, other than meeting him in Mid-South back in the day. And then when I came back to the WWE, it was all of maybe a month that I even had any interaction with him in WWE.
Let's get to September 22nd, Primetime Wrestling. Papa Shango beats Boss Man by countout. That really just feels like a mind meld to me. Like, how are these guys in the same place at the same time? But they are. Boss Man is moving his way up the card too. He's teaming with the Ultimate Warrior and the Undertaker to beat Kamala, Nails, and Razor Ramon by October, when they're doing double shots in Massachusetts. He works with Shawn Michaels on Wrestling Challenge on October 13th. And through the rest of October and most of November, it's Boss Man and Nails on the house show loop, with one exception. He works with Kamala on November 12th and 15th. And that gets us to Survivor Series 1992, which you're actually back for, and we can talk about. Right. We see Boss Man pin Nails with the Bubba Slam in 5 minutes and 43 seconds. It's a nightstick on a pole match, bro. Boss Man comes down with the stick, hits Nails a few times, and then Nails gets it away. Eventually, Boss Man makes a comeback and scores a clean pin. And I guess this is something of a surprise, because it's not like these guys have worked together for the last several months. What'd you think of this match at Survivor Series between Nails and Boss Man?
Thank God it was short. You know, Nails wasn't the great athletic worker. He was a big guy. He was a gimmick, and he was a puncher and a kicker, but he wasn't that great worker that you were going to have great matches out of. He was simply an attraction, and that's how you had to use him. So it's best to keep him short and sweet.
So let's talk about the real reason we're talking about Nails here. He's not long for this world. Here's what was written in the Observer. Probably the most talked about item of the past week revolves around the firing of Nails, which happened on December 14th. It's been confirmed by many that there was a physical altercation between Wachholtz, 34, and McMahon, 47. Wachholtz had not talked about the incident publicly as of press time, apparently on advice from his lawyer, although he did file a police report immediately after the incident. The only official Titan word that I know of was from last week, when a memo was released late on the 14th that Wachholtz was terminated immediately for unprofessional conduct. Apparently, Wachholtz, who lives in Minneapolis, had a reputation as a street fighter and had won a tough man contest in the Twin Cities before becoming a pro wrestler in '84. And he was meeting with Vince in a locker room around 4:30 p.m. before the television tapings that evening in Green Bay. A few Titan officials who were near the room started hearing loud shouts coming from the room. According to one source, some thought it was just another wrestler shouting really loudly doing a promo, but then there was a very audible, "I want my fucking money!" Apparently, the argument was involving Wachholtz's payoff from the SummerSlam pay-per-view show, which he had apparently just received and thought was too low. After the argument grew more heated, those listening heard what sounded like a punch and or a thud, and some WWF officials opened the door to find Wachholtz on top of McMahon, his hands around McMahon's throat, with the latter seemingly helpless. The two were pulled apart by 4 agents, and a WWF spokesperson, Steve Planamenta, said the discussion was about money. I guess he wasn't happy with his pay. That happened. What happened after that is he jumped on Vince. Police came, and then we have a police report that alleges Vince did things that were a fabrication. I guess it's worth mentioning that 2 days later, Officer Scott Sim of the Brown County Sheriff's Department said that Wachholtz was listed as a victim and McMahon as the suspect in an alleged sexual assault. In the report, Wachholtz claimed that he pushed McMahon away, knocking him to the floor. And at the time, the agents and wrestlers came in and separated the two. The police report said at the time there was a locker room door that was partially open, and the victim believes 3 witnesses may have seen or heard something, and he claimed it was the second time that he had been assaulted by McMahon, the first being at Madison Square Garden. Now, according to the report, Earl Hebner was only 5 or 6 feet away. He says the door was open when all this happened, And he says McMahon and Wacholz had been arguing for 45 minutes to an hour about the SummerSlam payoff, which apparently Wacholz had just received and was complaining was too small when he started demanding more money. And here's a quote. "He launched across the room, grabbed him by the throat, and threw him down," said Earl Hebner. At that point, Sergeant Slaughter, Gorilla Monsoon, Dave Hebner, and Arnold Scollin came in and pulled Wacholz off McMahon. Quote, "Kevin ran to the phone and called 911 and told the police to come down because he'd been sexually assaulted," Earl Hebner recalled. "Not a chance. There's no way. He couldn't have pulled a gun as fast as Nails was on him." So your thoughts? Because this is something that really took over wrestling, man. And essentially, I mean, even the New York Post would report that Wacholz is trying to extort $150,000 from McMahon here. And, this takes on a life of its own. Were you there? What did you hear? What do you remember?
Well, I was there. I wasn't in the room, nor was I in the hallway when it was all going down. But the preface to it was, roughly the Thursday or Friday prior to that television taping, we had been working at the house, and as we did, if Vince was busy doing other things, the phone would ring. We always answered the phone. And I answered the phone. It was Kevin Wacholz who asked for Vince. I told him he wasn't able to come to the phone right then. He was on another line. He says, "Yeah, well, tell him to call me." I said, "All right." So I gave Vince the message and told him. And Vince was like, "I'll talk to him at TV, whatever he needs. It can wait till TV." And apparently Vince didn't call him back. So when I saw Kevin at TV, he says, "Hey, did you give Vince the message?" I said, "Yes, I did." And that was the end of it for me. Pat and I were in the arena by the ring. We were going over something, and we were like, well, let's go back and run it by Vince, whatever the hell we were talking about. And we ran into Paul Bearer. And Paul says, "Well, it's over." I was like, "What?" And he goes, "The fight, everything, it's over." It's like, "What fight?" He goes, "Oh, Nails and Vince." And Pat and I look at each other like, "What?" So we go running back to Vince's office, and Vince was in his office, and he was on his feet. He was fine. Sarge was still in the office, and it was like, somebody get Nails out of here, and I don't want him here anymore. And we're like, what the hell happened? And Vince goes, "Well, we were talking. He was upset about a fine, and he was upset about, I guess, the SummerSlam payoff. I really don't even remember. But he says, we were sitting here, and he kept saying, I want more money. I want more money." And I said, "No." And he just leaped across, and Vince was sitting on a bench or on a chair on a bench. And when Nails leaped across, Vince was still sitting and had his hands around his throat. And Vince just tumped over like, a tea kettle, ass over tea kettle, And Skolin and Sarge were the two that I'd heard were there right away, and got him off. And Wacholz just walked out. Yeah, went down, called the cops, said he'd been sexually assaulted. So, then he came up with the second sexual assault, because a big guy like that, was going to allow that one, I guess, to happen without calling cops. He was waiting for this one. It was a weird deal, but, as crazy as all that sounds, man, the next thing was, okay, what do you guys got? And we were off doing business. That was it.
What's weird to me is the idea that, and I know it's the climate at the time because there's all the sex scandal allegations going on at the time. So it feels like something that he can just sort of hit the panic button for, but it's just fascinating to me. I mean, it feels deliberate. Like he goes in and he's like, "I'm going to get my fucking money. And if he don't want to, I'm just going to call 911 and say, 'He touched my dick.'"
Well, that's kind of what it sounds like happened.
I mean, it's crazy.
Again, it is crazy. It is crazy. But guys on the road all the time in cars and away from your family, and you just come up with shit. And I think that you can fuck with your mind and play games with your mind an awful lot if you think about something too much.
It's amazing.
It really is. And only in the wrestling business, it kind of sounds like sometimes. But there are crazy things that happen in other businesses, as I find out. But it's... yeah, it was crazy. And then people always, well, then was Vince upset? Vince was no shit. okay, what do you guys got? And then we walked out to the ring. We were going over what we got. And then the cops came and talked to him. And he talked to them for maybe 10, 15 minutes at max. They left, and it was another day of TV. We had to rewrite. We wrote nails out of TV that night. Well, that sounds
I feel like that's the understatement of the year. We wrote nails out of TV. That might actually need to be a T-shirt soon. And I guess we should.
Hey, guys, one other thing. Let's go ahead and change that nails segment for tonight. Are you sure? You don't want to think about it? Yeah.
Pro Wrestling Tees is actually delivering the goods right now these days. And we have got a ton of shirts over at bruceprichard.com. Bruce, what's your favorite shirt lately?
Lately is still, man, how the hell can you top fresh painted coat?
I mean, I think he can. It's not even top 5 for me.
Get out of here.
No, it's not my deal. Now, I do really appreciate the doot. It's the classic. It's an oldie. It's a goodie. But around my house, man, people are wearing out the Whiz Awful His House. I've seen that all over Huntsville. It's catching on.
In my house too, but I've actually broken down and got for both my children pronouns, pal, because I have to hear about how he said and she said and he did this and he did that. I'm like, who the hell is he and she? So if you got one of those, pronouns, pal is also available over there, and it's one of the top sellers of all time, kind of like I used to be over. 1 and 2.
I'm a big fan of King's Sandwich Shop. The greatest sandwiches on God's green earth. And I feel like now's a good time to sort of smarten everybody up. We've got a whole new box of gimmicks available at boxofgimmicks.com. I can't believe this is a real thing. But if you can believe this, we have baby onesies. We have quarter zip, pullovers. We got hoodies. We got sweatshirts. We got polos. Tumblers. We got wind shirts. We got mugs. We got travel mugs. We got beer steins. But man, the baby onesie, it's ridiculous. Baseball shirts, long sleeve shirts, whatever you're looking for, we've got it over at boxofgimmicks.com. But my favorite is the Doot koozie and the Doot beach towel. Just in time for summer, you're going to be chilling by the pool. Well, why not pick up a Doot tumbler and a Doot beach towel and a Doot beer koozie? I can't believe this is real stuff. And we've actually had people, can't believe this is real, request baby onesies. And they're all available right now at boxofgimmicks.com.
What are you going to dress your baby in?
It's funny.
Day onesie.
It's funny that you asked that, because I swear this is a real thing. And I know we're not supposed to be talking about it on this show. But there's a baby onesie on the Tony Schiavone section of boxofgimmicks.com that says low-key big hog, and I got to put that on my baby, right?
Oh, you're a poor child.
Check out boxofgimmicks.com, and we're going to do something different there. If you pick up a shirt at bruceprichard.com, Bruce is going to call and thank you. If you pick up some of this silly nonsense at boxofgimmicks.com, nobody's calling. Roll Tide!
Oh, hell.
Oh, come on. That's funny. Bruce or I or somebody we know will call and thank you if you go to boxofgimmicks.com.
You will get a phone call on your phone from someone.
That's right. It might. At
some point.
It'll be us or someone we know.
Yeah, it might be, but highly unlikely. However, you will get a phone call, I bet you, eventually, from someone somewhere saying something.
And it'll be all about us. Not really, but maybe, possibly.
Yeah. If you say, hey, are you calling about us? Then they may say, no, but don't let them off the hook like that.
It's a rib. It's really from us. Boxofgimmicks.com, bruceprichard.com. Man, I can't believe this is real. Okay, the rest of 92 is Bossman and Razor Ramon working house shows. And in January, he starts working with Yokozuna a lot. Let's get to the Royal Rumble. That goes down on January 24th, 1993 in Sacramento, California. Bam Bam pins the Big Boss Man with a headbutt off the top rope. And it looks like Boss Man's putting on the weight again here, according to Dave Meltzer in The Observer. The match only gets a star. Not really the best look for Boss Man here. What do you remember about Royal Rumble 1993?
Well, as far as Boss Man goes, I think that I don't want to say the bloom was off the rose because it really wasn't, but I think in Boss Man's head that where do I go from here? You know, I've worked with the top guys. I've been on top, had a great run. Vince was looking to cool him off a little bit and then, you know, bring him back and do something else with him. But Boss, I think, was just a little disillusioned at this point and feeling kind of frustrated, and it showed in his work. It wasn't the best work.
It really does feel like it's winding down. I guess we should mention here on February 2nd that Ric Flair gets a win over Boss Man, and then Boss Man puts over Bam Bam and Papa Shango on house shows pretty much through the rest of February. He even puts over Jerry Lawler on February 26th. And then it's reported in the March 29th edition of The Observer that Ray Traylor had signed as a regular performer for WCW. He had apparently negotiated with both New Japan and All Japan as well. So it looks like the Big Boss Man character is done, and Meltzer sort of speculates that he'll probably reprise his old role of Big Bubba Rogers when he returns back to WCW. Talk to us about Boss Man leaving the WWF. Did it just feel like the character had run its course? Had been soured on him? Was he tired of the schedule? Why does he leave? Does he leave on good terms?
You know, he did leave on fairly good terms, but Vince was, again, looking to give him a rest, and he was looking to just put that character, you know, either on the shelf for a little bit and give it a little bit of time away. And Ray felt like he should still be on top, and you can't be on top forever. I mean, it's cyclical, and you need to rotate that out a little bit. So Ray not wanting to wait. It's like, okay, well, I'll go somewhere else and be put on the shelf. And I think Vince understood that. He wasn't going to do a lot with him at that time. So if you need to go somewhere else and you need to do that, then good luck to you. And hopefully we'll have you back here soon sometime.
It's sort of interesting that he has a 5-year run in the company here. And despite being over like Grover, it's certainly a different era. Never gets a chance to hold any sort of title belt. Was he one of those characters you're going to say he didn't need it?
Didn't need it. Would have held him down. He's a big, heavy weight around his waist.
I love you for that. So, of course, he goes to WCW, hangs out there about 5 years. So he has a Big Boss Man run, you know, with the company here for 5 years. He goes to WCW, lasts about 5 years. He has every gimmick under the sun. He's the Boss, the Guardian Angel, Big Bubba Rogers, Ray Traylor. I mean, just on and on and on. But he even wrestles Hulk Hogan in the main event of the first Nitro. So Hogan still thought really, really highly of him and got him in that spot. Did you keep in touch with him when he's in WCW, or is this one of those, you know, out of sight, out of mind work relationships at that point?
Out of sight, out of mind, but I did run into Ray a few times in airports, and, you know, we would be in the same towns, crossing paths, and always very friendly and just, hey, what's going on, bub? But always just cordial as hell and a wonderful, wonderful guy.
Let's talk about him coming back here, because he does finally return in 1998. The October 12th, 1998 Observer would say this: Ray Traylor has signed and should debut in about a month as the Big Boss Man once again, probably as a heel enforcer for McMahon. Traylor, 36, is said to be down to 290 pounds. Most of his career, he's been between 340 and 390. He's recuperating from back surgery, which as recently as 2 months ago, he was fearing would be career ending, but he did receive a clean bill of health from his doctor to return to the ring. The jury's out on this one, as it's been years since he's been a top name, but at one point he was a great worker for a guy of his size. And while he's older, there are plenty of guys who have had a lot of great years in the ring that are quite a bit older than he is. Chat us up here, Bruce. How did this return to the company come together?
Well, I think it was Vince Russo who actually had the idea, and the fact that Vince McMahon always had a soft spot for the character, the Big Boss Man, because that was something that McMahon created, and he liked Ray Traylor as well. Thought, okay, that could work for our security stuff with the corporation and what they were doing, but it's got to be an updated version. It's got to be a new Big Boss Man. It's not going to be the old prison guard Big Boss Man. That's the change in the all black and kind of the riot gear squad riot squad gear that he had. Another t-shirt. But to bring him back and do a new incarnation of the Boss Man, he looked different. He felt different. And I don't think that people expected that he had lost that much that much of a step in the ring, but the pace at the time, especially with Austin and those guys, it was a different pace, man. And you had to go. And Ray came in. I don't know that he was in the best shape of his life as far as cardio and ring work that way. But I thought he was a formidable guy to have in that role.
It's a pretty big deal for him to come back. It feels like he reinvents himself. I guess we should mention here that the return actually happens on October 12th, from, Nassau Coliseum. It's Raw, and Big Boss Man returns when we have an Austin Rock tag team beating Kane and The Undertaker. Boss Man comes in wearing a mask and attacks Austin, and then unmasks and reveals himself to be Mr. McMahon's personal security / bodyguard. What was Ray like when he came back here? I mean, is he getting along with everybody? Is it a little awkward? Is there a transition period? How was he welcomed back into the fold?
Like walking back into a Sunday dinner at home. He was welcomed back with open arms. Everybody was happy to see him. There are a lot of his old friends in the company, and he didn't burn bridges. He was never an asshole. So people were happy to see him and happy for this new opportunity. And he was a new face. He was new all over again. It had been years since we had seen him. So people were happy to see him again from that newness factor.
He has his first matches back at the Survivor Series. And of course he's part of Vince McMahon's corporation. There's a tournament going on here, and I can't wait for us to cover this later this November. It goes down in St. Louis on November 15th. And Steve Austin beat the Big Boss Man in about 3.5 minutes. And he's doing this with a nightstick. And he continues to attack him even after the match. It gets half a star, but that's not the last time we see Boss Man on the show. This is a pretty famous Bruce Prichard story. Go ahead and share with us what he winds up doing a little later.
Oh my God. Well, because it was a tournament match, he had a couple different matches, but he also had a run-in to go out and screw Steve Austin in one of the matches earlier on in the night. We're all at the gorilla position. It was a crazy day in and of itself. And I remember looking up, and I have the entire corporation. I've got everybody in front of me, including Boss Man, and send them to the ring for their match. And I'm on headset and we're watching the match and not even thinking about anything. And we're getting to the spot to where we know it's Boss Man's spot to slide in the ring and hit Steve. And I'm like, okay, we're looking for Boss Man here. And Kevin's like, when are you going to send him? So he's at the ring. She's like, he's not at the ring. I said, he went out with them. We're looking, I've got all my cameras up and I'm looking around. There's no Boss Man. So I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, where the fuck is Boss Man? And everybody's going, Boss, he's at the ring. He's at the ring. I say, he's not at the fucking ring. I need Boss Man. Where's Boss Man? The biggest thing that he had to do all night, forget all his matches and shit. He could have worked 20 fucking times. The biggest thing that he had to do all night was get in there and clock Steve Austin for the finish. And he's not there. And we don't know where he is. And then finally somebody says, oh, I think he's back there talking over his match. Somebody get him to ringside. And I remember him coming around the corner, running as fast as he could. And in the meantime, Vince is at the ring. They realize now that Boss Man's not in the ring. Vince tells Jerry Briscoe to get in the ring and hit Steve Austin. Now, Briscoe's got two choices here. You got the goose that laid the golden egg in the ring, the Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Jerry has a chair, and Jerry's been told to clock Steve in the back of the head with the chair. And Jerry is thinking, okay, he's got a bad neck, and he's not really comfortable about swinging this damn chair and hitting Steve. But he does. And as we used to call it, it was the tink heard round the world, because it was not a stiff chair shot by any stretch of the imagination. And Jerry got a good razzing for it for a long time of, oh, that was just a little tink, and you can't swing a chair. And in Jerry's defense, which I will defend him on this one big time, was he wasn't about to go out and swing that thing and hit Steve in the back where Steve was unprotected with a bad neck. And Jerry took care of him and took care of that goose that laid the golden egg. And then Boss Man got out there too little, too late. But, yeah, I was furious. And, of course, the heat came back on me saying, well, why didn't you notice it? I said, he was there. And Boss Man spoke up. He says, no, I was there. He goes, I was standing right in front of him right when you guys went out. And then he asked someone else, do I have time to go over my next match? And they said, yes. He goes, and I ran back there to go over the match. So he was man enough to stand up and say, no, it was my fault. I'm the one that left. I'm the one that went back to go over my match. So I always appreciated that as well. He was a stand-up guy.
Well, let's talk about it. The next night on Raw, Boss Man challenges Ken Shamrock for the Intercontinental title. It goes to a double DQ. And after the match, Vince comes out and convinces Shamrock to join the corporation. Let's fast forward to November 30th, where Boss Man challenges Mankind for the hardcore title. The Rock interferes here and hits Mankind with a rock bottom, and that allows the Boss Man to capture his very first title in the WWF when he becomes the hardcore champion. Was this cool or interesting? What the fuck are you doing, Bruce? Or is this what we're doing now?
Oh, you hear that? Shit, yeah. Sorry. I was moving shit.
Well, fucking stop. We're taping a goddamn podcast. What's wrong with you?
God damn, these sensitive microphones.
He wins the fucking hardcore title. Does he fucking care, or is he about as excited about it as you are doing this show?
You know, I think that he was happy to be involved in something, and he was happy to be involved in the corporation and be able to, you know, have a program and have a storyline going on. And he came right back in, and he's working with the top group. So he's part of Mr. McMahon's stuff. And I think he was happy to be doing that. It wasn't about the title. It was about being involved in something, being involved in a storyline.
Well, it gets on to the Rock Bottom pay-per-view, December 13th in Vancouver. Can't wait for us to cover that. We might do it this December. On here, we see the Outlaws beat Shamrock and Boss Man to retain the titles in about 17 minutes. It gets 3/4 of a star, but let's fast forward to December 14th. This is the show. This is the Raw, actually, where DX does a parody of the corporation, and they have China imitate the Big Boss Man. What do you remember about that skit?
Oh, well, I thought it was some of the classic shit that they did, because they got to do Mr. McMahon there and they got to do everybody in there. And I thought that it was just good shit. But China doing the big, doing the Big Boss Man was absolutely classic shit. It was entertaining as fuck. And that's part of the thing with what helped get that DX whole group over, was because they could do entertaining and they could do some edgier shit. And that's during the time that we were in that role of doing the edgier, sexier, raunchier, if you will, kind of entertainment. So it was still different, and it was still new, that people were kind of going, oh, holy fuck, what are they doing?
Well, here's what they're doing. Later in that same show, Boss Man and Shamrock challenge the New Age Outlaws for the tag titles, and they end up winning when Shawn Michaels knocks out Billy Gunn with a pipe. So Boss Man goes all these years without a title, and now he's back, and he's a double champ almost immediately with both the hardcore title and the tag team championship. It's sort of fun that you said just a minute ago, he didn't need it, and he comes back now and he's just collecting titles like Austin Aries.
There you go, because he's in the corporation. Now it's okay. I still don't think he needed these titles at all.
Well, he didn't keep them very long. Don't worry. December 21st on Raw, Road Dogg would beat the Big Boss Man to win the hardcore title after Mankind hit Boss Man. And then he gets a shot at the European title a week later, but X-Pac retains. And eventually we see the Royal Rumble come about. And it's sort of a fun deal because on the way there, we get a match with Bossman and China on Raw, where the gimmick is whoever wins gets to be the 30th entrant into the Royal Rumble, and China fucking wins. It's sort of a fun deal here. She last eliminated Vince here in the process to do it, and he takes a massive whiplash style bump when she throws him out of the ring. It almost looks like Vince broke his fucking neck. Was he hurt in this spot at all?
We thought he was, and it looked absolutely brutal. Between that and the Dudleys damn near dropping him one time were some of the nastiest bumps that I remember Vince taking. But yes, the whiplash, and we thought that he had broken his neck going over the damn top rope.
So Bossman beats Jesse James in about 12 minutes in a hardcore match at that Royal Rumble 1999 in Anaheim. He also finds himself in the Rumble match. He comes in number 22 and eliminates both X-Pac and D-Lo before himself being eliminated by Steve Austin. And it's sort of an interesting deal the next night on Raw. Gerald Briscoe and Pat Patterson are trying to convince Ken Shamrock and Big Boss Man to drink saltpeter. Talk me through this.
Out of pace, because you drink this and it makes you go out of pace. So you're not thinking about the woman. You're not thinking about the sex. You drink the saltpeter at a pace, and then you don't worry.
So, well, hang on. If you drink the Peter, you don't think about the women? Is that what you're saying?
You don't think about the women if you drink the Peter. Back in my day, before a wrestling match, you drank a lot of that saltpeter because women weaken legs.
And back in my day, you drank the Peter to get your push.
That's what they did in your day?
Talk me through this. Who's fucking saying, I got an ideal? What? This is so
well,
fucking
this is
silly.
the Vince Russo era, and so probably, this is Vince McMahon. I know what. What if he makes him drink saltpeter? Bro, what's the Peter salt? I guarantee you, I will bet you anything that had to be explained.
This is
kind of like I'm doing right here. That had to be explained.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Had to be. I mean,
bro,
saltpeter.
So what's the poipus?
I don't know why this saltpeter has me so tickled, but it just feels like something my grandma would write. Like, seriously, like outside of my grandmother, I don't know any person in real life who's ever said saltpeter. It's just ridiculous. Later.
Well, you just said back in your day, you drank the Peter to salt the. Well, anyway.
Well, it was a little creative license, if you will.
Okay.
Later in this same show, Owen and Jarrett would beat the Big Boss Man and Shamrock to win the tag team titles when the Blue Blazer runs in and hits Shamrock with a guitar. There's just so much going on in this era. Let's talk about the February 8th Raw. We see Steve Austin versus the Corporation in a gauntlet match where each member of the Corporation would get DQ'd, and then Boss Man comes in and beats him with a nightstick, and then Vince comes in and pins Austin. And that sets up St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which I can't wait for us to cover next February. On the undercard, we see Bossman pin Midian in about 6 minutes and 20 seconds. And Meltzer fucking hates it. He writes, crowd was dead. Bossman was booed. Nobody cheered Midian, which made it hilarious when Lawler was trying to overplay how everyone is taking to the ministry. Bossman laid in his punches, but Midian's offense looked terrible. Fans booed when Bossman sold a real crappy clothesline and loud, boring chants started. It was like a Hogan match, but with a dead silent crowd. Bossman won with the slam out of nowhere, and after the match, the entire ministry, Sans, Undertaker, and Bear, all attacked Bossman and beat him down. Taker and Bear were in the aisle, and Viscera got his revenge for earlier splashing Bossman 3 times, and the ministry carried him to the back as if he was either going to be a human sacrifice or Viscera's lunch. Negative star. What do you remember about this silly shit?
Well, actually, it was Viscera's dinner because it was nighttime. He had already had his supper, which is the evening or late. I don't know what the fuck. It was a way to try and get to the huge WrestleMania extravaganza of Boss Man and Undertaker in the Hell in a Cell, where we could hoist him up by his shoulders. That was the genesis of it. That was to get us there, that Boss Man had refused to join the ministry, and they, were kind of putting a hit on him. And this was the angle to get him to that point. Kind of crazy.
We start building towards, of course, this Undertaker Boss Man situation. So the next night on Raw, Boss Man, Test, and Shamrock are taking on the Acolytes and Midian, but it ends in a no contest when the Undertaker and Ministry come out, and Viscera and the Brood come out with an unconscious Shane, and they present him to the Undertaker, who says Vince probably doesn't care about his boy anyway. And then Taker gives Shane what looks like an envelope and says, "This is from the Lord of Darkness and is for Vince." For the rest of February into March, it's all Boss Man, Undertaker on the house shows. How did those guys get along sort of behind the scenes?
They got along great behind the scenes. And if you ask me, I thought that the Undertaker Boss Man matches themselves were pretty damn good for two big guys that could go. The whole angle was about getting to Vince, and the whole Undertaker turn and all that other good stuff with Austin and the Bear and Stephanie and so on and so forth. So it was kind of a means to an end, but it was the matches themselves with Taker and Boss Man, straight matches, were actually good shit.
Let's talk about what's next. March 8th, Boss Man is attacked by the Ministry, and they tie him to the Undertaker symbol. This looks an awful lot like a crucifixion. Did you guys get any bad feedback for this from the fans, the USA Network? What was the backlash from this?
Well, for people that thought it looked like a crucifixion, it just looked like a big Undertaker symbol to me.
Oh my gosh.
It's a big Undertaker symbol. It's a symbol. God damn, where are your heads?
March 22nd, Boss Man, Shamrock, Test, they team up to take on the Undertaker and the Acolytes, but the match gets thrown out in about 2 minutes. Boss Man hits Taker in the head with a nightstick, but he still sits up afterwards. And that gets us to WrestleMania 15, which we've covered in long form on the archives. And this match in particular had us tickled, man. It's Boss Man in a Hell in a Cell match with the Undertaker. The match gets a fucking dud, but man, the silliness with this. Tell us your version here, Bruce. Let's get the Cliff Notes version of this story.
It was terrible. I mean, it just was absolutely terrible. To the payoff of this whole thing was to hang a man in the Hell in a Cell. And for people that have seen it, it's a visual that just will be etched in your mind forever. But at the end of the match, Taker goes over, and now let's hang Boss Man and send him into the heavens. So you got the Brood up on top. They're rappelling down on top of the cage. They throw down the noose, and you don't actually see it on camera, but Undertaker goes down and hooks Boss Man, who is wearing a harness, under his wrestling gear. They hook up the harness and then put the noose around his neck, which is actually hooked to a harness, so there's never any strain on Boss Man's neck, obviously, and then raise him to the ceiling to hang him, and that was supposed to be the visual. But the way that the harness fit and the way that stuff always works, if you're not in a really darkened theatrically lit place, is his shoulders are up around his ears and he's being hoisted to the top of the building. Add on top of that, I don't know if it was Edge or Christian, but one of them had not gotten completely all the way up to their perch above the cage as the cage is raising. So it was a debacle in every sense of the word. The audience sat in stunned silence, wondering, what in the hell am I looking at? It made no sense. It was bad, is just about the only way I can describe it. And I remember Taker coming back through the curtain afterwards with his head down, like, that was the drizzling shits. Actually would have had to improve a lot to just be the drizzling shits.
WrestleMania 15, the full story here, the silly nonsense of hanging a fucking guy. You can check this out in the archive, somethingtowrestle.com. I don't know what else we can say about it here.
Yeah, you got to see it to really understand the putrid hate.
I guess it's worth mentioning that he's back working right away. So it's a Roadrunner cartoon because they hung a motherfucker, and he's right back working. April 3rd, he's even in Yorkshire, England, working with Steve Austin for a world title match. On the April 12th edition of Raw, it looks like the Big Boss Man has an opportunity to challenge for the Intercontinental title, and Godfather offers him some hose for his chance to give up his Intercontinental title match against Goldust. And Boss Man takes him up. He wants all 5 of the hose, and Godfather makes it happen. So he steps in Boss Man's place and actually wins the Intercontinental title. That's a fun fucking angle right there. A guy giving up his title shot for hose.
Pimping ain't easy, dog.
April 19th on Raw, they do a no holds barred match where Shamrock beats Boss Man. And through the rest of April, we see Austin and Big Show teaming up to beat Boss Man and Rock. And that gets us to Backlash on April 25th. Kane would pin the Big Boss Man in 2 minutes and 45 seconds with a choke slam after Boss Man accidentally collided with Test in the process. Meltzer hated the match, says it's really bad. And then I guess we'll fast forward to May 10th on Raw. There's a coal miner's glove match with Boss Man and Test. Bruce, what the fuck? 1999, a coal miner's glove match? Is this Smoky Mountain? What's happening?
Well, they still got coal miners, and don't the coal miners all wear them dangerous gloves with metal on them? And God forbid you get that, and if you can climb that pole and use that, you can bloody your opponent and beat him to a bloody pulp. Man, it's a colloquial gimmick that works, I guess, where they had coal miners and shit. And you try and take it. But again, here we are. What year are we at? 1998?
1999.
1999, and we're having a coal miners glove match.
What the fuck?
I'm going to go with the what the fuck on this one.
That doesn't make any sense. It's just silly shit. Let's talk about the Over the Edge pay-per-view briefly. Boss Man is in an elimination tag match here, teaming with Bradshaw, Farouk, and Viscera as they take on Mankind, Big Show, Ken Shamrock, and Test. Mankind eliminates the Big Boss Man, but of course that's not what anybody remembers. They remember what happened with Owen that day. What was the relationship like with Boss Man and Owen? It feels like these guys would have been best of friends.
They were friends, and it was, it's just a tough night for everybody, and much less having to be the first ones to go out right after, this accident took place. But it was a hard night, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Yeah, that's a fun deal to think about the fun memories with Owen, but not so fun to sort of talk about this. Let's keep it moving. Sunday Night Heat, May 25th, is X-Pac beating Big Boss Man in a King of the Ring qualifying match. Let's fast forward to June 14th. It's supposed to be a blindfold match on Raw between Boss Man and Test, but Boss Man attacks him as soon as he puts the blindfold on, which I think is awesome. Leads to a DQ. Well, the blindfold match, the coal miner's glove match, what the fuck? What's going on here in 99?
Gotta have gimmicks, bro. For TV, you got to do something different, and people like the gimmicks. Now, usually when you get a gimmick, there's a reason for a gimmick, and you have a reason to do the shit you're doing. There was no rhyme or reason to a lot of the gimmicks and why we were doing the damn things. That was the issue. And it was gimmicks for gimmick's sakes too often that it didn't make sense, and that's what hurt. And well, I do. I actually like the blindfold match, and I think it may have been me that was like, why didn't he just attack him? He's a heel. As soon as he gets blindfolded and beat the shit out of him. Kind of going towards the Attitude Era. We don't care, and if you're not going to care, nothing's going to mean anything, then fuck it. Beat the shit out of him. And that's what we did.
Raw on June 21st has Austin Boss Man with Shawn Michaels as the ref. And the stipulations here are, if Austin wins, he gets to decide what the stipulation for the King of the Ring match, where he takes on both Vince and Shane is. And of course, Austin wins. Let's fast forward. July 19th, we would see Al Snow beat the Big Boss Man by DQ in 1 second when Boss Man hit him with a foreign object as soon as the match starts. And now we're going to head towards Fully Loaded on July 25th. We would see Bossman win the hardcore title from Al Snow in 10 minutes and 13 seconds. What a crazy match that this was. They're brawling all over the place. There's even a spot where, they're hitting each other with plants, not like a fake fan, but like fucking shrubbery. It's just phenomenal.
Ficus trees.
Bulldogs on the pavement, just all over the building here. It gets a 1.25 in the Observer. What'd you think? I mean, how did Ray, take to these hardcore matches? Was he a fan of these? Did he hate it? Did he enjoy it? Did he think it was fun? What's he thinking of these hardcore matches?
Yeah. At this point, it was fun and it was something to do and he was involved in something. Ray wasn't really that complicated. As long as he was involved in something, he had a storyline going, he was happy. And the stuff with Al Snow was entertaining. It was bringing out, getting his personality out. This was all kind of new. So it was tongue in cheek a lot, but the hardcore matches were something that we had started to do. And it kept trying to be, how do you top this? How do you top what we did last time? Oh my God, he's got a ficus. Oh my God, leaf right in the eye. There's only so much you can do after a while, man. And you keep jumping that shark and it just kind of all meshed together. But trust me, man, we kept going with it and got even more out there, as I'm sure we're going to go cover here.
Well, it's an interesting feud that we're going to talk a lot about. Let's keep going. Let's go to SummerSlam right now. We got August 22nd in Minneapolis. It's a big show. We've got Al Snow working with the Big Boss Man, and Al Snow actually gets the win to win the hardcore title in 7 minutes and 27 seconds. They immediately go backstage and, they're doing all sorts of silliness back here, including, I can't believe this is real. This is directly from the Observer. They acted as if he had thrown this pet cage with Pepper inside hard onto the ground. Later in the match, they explained that rather than take the heat for the illusion, that Pepper actually wasn't in the crate. Snow broke a blackboard on Bossman, and they stationed, quote, a fake crippled guy backstage with 2 crutches, and before the match was over, had taken both from him as weapons. They destroyed a soda dispenser, which I think is fun, by the way. I know Dave's from California, but down here, that's called a Coke machine. They went outside the Target Center and crossed the street to a bar called Blues Alley. Someone got in the way of the camera shots, and Jim Dotson, the head of WWF security, nearly tore his head off. They went into a men's room and used one of those urine disinfectant soaps. Now that was gross. They took turns breaking beer bottles over each other's head. They both wound up bleeding from the forearm, or from the forehead and the arm. And then Snow leaped off a rail and moonsaulted Bossman through a table. What an unbelievable deal here. The finish sees them brawling in a pool hall backstage, and Road Dogg hit Bossman with something, and then Snow pinned him on the pool table. And after the match, it appeared that Stevie Richards and Blue Meanie were trying to kidnap Pepper, Al Snow's dog, except I guess they were afraid of heat from the animal cruelty groups, and the announcer specifically had to say they weren't trying to kidnap Pepper. Snow beat them both up for apparently no reason. 2.5 stars. This is not a match that gets talked about a lot, but man, what a spectacle this was it not?
Holy shit, it was. And I actually, how many stars did you give it?
2.5.
Well, I thought it was even better than that, and I hate all the hardcore shit, but it was so damn entertaining, and taking the path and going out through the buildings and going across the street and all that other bullshit just added to the excitement of it, and that anything can happen and shit going on all over the place. I thought was pretty damn good. And I love that the Dave Meltzer, the expose is talking about the mints in the urinal as if we really used a mint in a urinal. But anyway, hey, he knows everything. So it was one of those absurd spectacles that when you describe it, all these years later, 20 years later, that it still is like, God damn, man, that's sound like an exciting match. There's a lot of shit going on there. And they delivered. And I think that this was helping Boss Man, because I don't think that his skills in the ring, having the type of matches that he had before, nor did he really have the kind of baby face, with the exception maybe of Taker to Feed, that these were really suiting themselves to what Boss Man was doing best at the time.
I cannot wait for what we're about to talk about. SmackDown.
Oh, I know.
August 24th, Kemper Arena. Boss Man beat Snow to regain the hardcore title, and after the match, he takes Al Snow's dog, Pepper. On the August 30th Raw, Boss Man goes to the ring and apologizes to Al for stealing Pepper and says he'll give him the dog back. He just has to come to his hotel to get him. So on the September edition of SmackDown, the September 2nd edition rather, Al Snow goes to the hotel room that Boss Man assured him that he had Pepper at, and he even says he has a meal ready for him. So he serves up Al some food, says he wants to do the right thing. So Al says he'll eat the food, but then he wants his dog. Al starts eating and he likes it, and he tells Al not to get a paw stuck in his throat and tells him he's eating his dog Pepper. Al ducks into a corner crying and heaving, and Boss Man tells Al Snow that he had warned him what would happen if Pepper bit him again, and then he did. So then he starts to beat up Al Snow, chokes him out with the nightstick, and according to Boss Man, this is what hardcore is all about. Bruce, stealing a dog, cooking the dog, feeding him the dog. This feels a lot like a Jimmy Superfly Snuka Mr. Fuji famous rib, if there's even such a word for that. Is this sort of art imitating life? Who booked this shit? This is one of the worst ideas in company history.
It's another example of be careful what you suggest sometimes out loud with Vince within earshot. And everyone had heard, the alleged stories of Fuji allegedly cooking Jimmy Snuka's dog and feeding it to him and so on and so forth. In the entertainment world, we felt we could get by with it. It's entertainment. It doesn't mean it's good entertainment, all the time. Just because you put something under the guise of entertainment doesn't mean it's good. There's good entertainment. There's bad entertainment. In my opinion, I'm a dog lover. I'm an animal lover. I felt it was tasteless entertainment. But at the same time, you watch, Hannibal Lecter and movies and shit like that. But that's clearly fiction. And it's clear that you're watching a movie. It's clear that those are actors. I wasn't a big fan of it, but yeah, we sure as hell did it. And not one of those moments that I can point back to with pride and go, hey, and then remember that time that we had pepper steak? Wasn't that cool? Yeah, no. Not one of the proud moments of angles and issues that you point back to and go, that was neat.
September 9th, British Bulldog beat the Big Boss Man to win the hardcore title. And the following week on SmackDown, they do Al Snow, Boss Man in a pepper on a pole match. What the fuck is this?
God damn, you got to blow it off, pal. He's got to get the ashes. Yeah, you take the rest of the pepper steak. It's leftovers. Dude, hey, you want to hear something? Think of the fucking names that were suggested for this. Leftovers on a pole. Puppy on a pole. I mean, all this shit is like, oh my God. And then it just came down to pepper on a pole. But it's really leftovers. God damn, he ate some of it. Got the rest, we'll feed it to him. It's just, the more you discuss it, the worse it gets.
It's hard for me to imagine that you guys are all making a great living sitting around talking about creative ideas, and this is what we settle on. Let's get to Unforgiven 99. It goes down on September 26th in Charlotte. We've touched on this before, but we need to talk about it again here.
Oh, God.
This is directly from the Observer. I'm going to try to keep it together here. Al Snow beat Big Boss Man in a hardcore match with a regular cage encased with a Hell in a Cell match with vicious dogs between the two cages in 11 minutes and 42 seconds. They spent a long time setting up the inside cage, leading to rare WWF dead time on a pay-per-view. Usually in this situation, they play video features, and I can't figure out why they didn't here. Boss Man's right eye still looked pretty bad from the angle on Monday, where Snow hit him with a glass pitcher, and they said he had structural damage to the eye. This was one of the all-time worst matches ever. The thing was built around the dogs, and you may be able to teach dogs to perform high spots, but you can't guarantee the timing will be right on television. The dogs showed up, one of them being on the floor rather than roaming. They were on short leashes and paid no attention to Boss Man and instead just barked at each other. Jim Ross called it a bowling shoe of a match. You know, really ugly, quickly. And by the time it was over, Ross noted it was the first time and quite possibly the last time such a match would ever take place in the WWF. Fans were chanting boring because the dogs screwed up the match. It didn't matter what the two did, which included Boss Man taking a superplex off the cage. Snow bled after Boss Man hit him twice with a cookie sheet, and they used pliers to the ear of Snow, but nobody cared. Snow hit Boss Man with a stick and he bled, and they set up another spot for the dogs, but they paid no attention and just kept barking at each other. Boss Man handcuffed Snow to the turnbuckles and went to climb out. Snow broke these handcuffs way too easily, and the crowd groaned. Snow finally pulled out the reemergence of head, which drew some cheers, but were mainly more groans, and hit Boss Man with it. Both started climbing with no drama because nobody cared, and Snow got out to win. Boss Man was supposed to run for his life from the dogs, who again paid no attention to him despite their trainers trying to get them to chase. -3 stars. Bruce, what the fuck?
Well, I'm going to take issue with the -3 stars because it wasn't that good. This could go down, and had this conversation with somebody yesterday. Just when you think you've seen the worst match of all time, trust me, there will be another one come along. I'm still waiting for that other one to come along. This was one of the all-time worst, ill-conceived ideas, worst executed matches in the history of the business. And I'm sure, hopefully, I'd love to hear some of your suggestions for something that was worse and more ill-conceived. But not only were the dogs just barking at each other, they were humping each other on the outside of the ring. The only thing they didn't do, which Vince was praying that they would do, was take big shits all over the ring on the outside of the ring. We were told we had working dogs, and these dogs were the drizzling shits. The guys that were handling the dogs didn't understand what it was that they wanted the dogs to do, but the dogs are trained to attack people in a certain way when they do certain things, and the guys couldn't get to it. Horrible. I mean, it was horrible, and I love busting Al Snow's balls about it because Al will actually defend it. Al will start to defend it. He knows it was terrible, but sometimes he'll defend parts of it, which is funny to me. But it was some of the worst shit I have ever seen in my 45 years in the wrestling business, because it was a spectacle, but not in the good kind. Couldn't believe we actually did it,
man.
And Vince was laughing his ass off in the back, because at a certain point, that's all you can do. Is laugh at it. You just can't. You can't sit there and be upset about it. You just got to laugh at it.
Oh my gosh! If you haven't seen this, man, you got to go watch it. What was Vince's reaction to the idea and the execution? How did Boss Man feel about it? Is it just universal groans after and
universal fart in church?
You know,
but Vince was laughing. I mean, Vince was at least laughing and finding the humor in it. You had to.
That's what I was going to say. Is it feels like something, you know, you've told us before that whenever something goes wrong, sometimes Vince just really laughs it off like, God damn, they shit all over it. He's fucking dying.
Well, they were shitting all over and it died.
Hey, so let me ask, I don't know when we'll have a chance to just work it in organically. I'm sure you've seen by now the spot that went viral from the Greatest Royal Rumble where Titus O'Neil tripped on his way to the ring. And Titus O'Neil, great guy, listens to the show, appreciate, all that he does for us and retweeting stuff and whatnot. However, he did have a pretty memorable moment trying to make his way down the ramp and found himself underneath the ring. Hypothetically, we know what Vince was, how Vince felt about it because we saw it on replay 19 times. What do you think his reaction was like backstage when he first saw that happen?
God damn it. Show me that again. Get that on a replay. I know that was his fucking reaction. And by the time that he was able to spit it out, it was probably what the only amount of time it took them to re-cue that son of a bitch up for that replay. He was loving it. I guarantee you he was loving it.
It's phenomenal.
That was some good fun. That was great television.
It was. I'm not arguing that at all.
So, yeah. Poor Titus. But you know what? Hopefully this will be a springboard for Titus to just, go to the moon.
Yeah, Titus World Slide.
There you go.
October 11th, we do Raw from the Georgia Dome. 33,000 fans here, paying a gate of $861,000. One of the largest 10 crowds in the history of American pro wrestling. And on this show, Bossman rips on Show about his father and how Big Show comes out super hot about it. And they have a 37-second situation before Bossman lays him out with a nightstick. Snow comes in for the save, but Bossman lays him out with the nightstick as well. It feels like this is a rib. You guys are bouncing from Pepper on a pole right to the big Bossman and Big Show. October 14th, a few days later on SmackDown, Bossman would beat Snow and Show in a triple threat to regain the hardcore title. And October 18th, pretty big day. Let's go to the Wrestling Observer here. Bossman was in the ring to wrestle Show, but Show got worried his dad had died and was broken up about it. What was disturbing wasn't this angle, but that Ross and Lawler were shot the exact same way and reacted in almost identical fashion as far as their tones and carefully chosen words to their reactions when Owen Hart died in Kansas City. The thought process behind all of this is both brilliant and rather sick. Since deaths in wrestling are so frequent, they are doing angles like this to make deaths part of the work, so in the future, it'll make the real deaths not so real either. I did feel sorry for them having to sell this because I sensed both being uncomfortable watching this with having to reprise their quote-unquote role in the Owen Hart deal as an angle just a few months earlier. As it turned out later in the show, they showed Bossman paying off the guy who told Show his dad was dead, so his dead dad isn't actually dead. He's actually still alive. This idea, no doubt, came from the deal last summer when JJ Dillon told Bret Hart that Stu had just died before a pay-per-view event in Baltimore, and it was actually just a prank call with someone with a lot of inside knowledge. So lots of disturbing stuff here, Bruce, but I know you take issue with Meltzer's comments here, so let him rip, Tater Chip.
Well, it's entertainment, and he wasn't dead, and so he wasn't playing off of that. So again, he can speculate because he's right all the time. So I'm sure he was right here, but it just, for me, I felt it was too soon, and there are things that you can go back to in real life and that you can hit that people relate to. And that's what we try and do. It's no different than any soap opera or anybody else that uses death as a tool and a trigger. It's an emotional trigger on people. And that's what we're trying to do. I don't think it really worked so much in that case. And we take it way over the top, but was what it was. But I agree, it's not in the best taste.
November 1st on Raw, Big Show does an interview with Michael Cole, and Bossman throws in tear gas. Cole manages to escape, but Show is shown as being near death, taken to the hospital where we're told he's changing colors. And Bossman and Prince Albert are also here, and they're wearing gas masks and put the boots to him. Whose idea was this? Why was Prince Albert put with Bossman?
Just is a placement more than anything, not having anything for him to do at the time, and two big guys trying to give Prince Albert a little bit more personality and trying different things, man. Sometimes you experiment. It may go a couple weeks and say, nah, this isn't working, move on, without any real plan, just seeing if there's some chemistry there sometimes. But the stuff we had talked about, doing a taser bit, and I'll never forget, we were going to do a taser where Big Boss Man was going to taser the Big Show. With the actual tasers, not like a stun gun, but with the thing that shoots the tasers and that you can do from a distance. And Big Show was like, fuck that. I said, oh, come on, man, I'll do it. And so let's go do it. So we had crash pads set up in the back, and they had the cops had it on the absolute lowest setting that they could put it on, and shot me with it. And it like hooks into your clothes and hooks into your skin. They go, okay, we're going to hit it. And man, when they hit it, I went down. Show looking at it, he goes, fuck you. I ain't doing that. And we're trying to think, okay, well, how can we do that? I mean, obviously we could do it, shoot the darts out, never hit the stunner part of it, like we talked about with the Mountie and Bill Watts and all that stuff, whatever, last week. But yeah, he didn't want to do it. So we did the tear gas, and we're trying to think of different things that a prison guard would do. And that's one thing, in prison, the inmates get ruly, throw some tear gas in there. And so just trying to incorporate more of the boss man gimmick into this heel persona and stuff with Big Show.
Unbelievable that you volunteered to get tased. Good for you.
Yeah, well, fuck that. I was with Show. Like, you know what? Yeah, fuck that. I'm good. I've been tased, and if a cop ever told me stop or you're getting tased, my ass is frozen.
Raw on November 8th, they announced the death of Paul White Sr., and as they toll the bell, Bossman comes out and reads a nasty poem. Bruce, do you want me to read the poem? Because this is one of my favorite things Bossman ever did.
Go ahead.
With the deepest regrets and tears that are soaked, I'm sorry to hear your dad finally croaked. He lived a full life on his own terms. Soon he'll be buried and eaten by worms. But if I could have a son as stupid as you, I'd have wished for cancer so I would die too. So be brave and be strong and get your life on track, 'cause that old bastard's dead and he ain't ever coming back.
You know my response.
I'm tickled. Let's hear it.
I hate it on all levels.
I mean, it is happening just a few months after Owen Hart has passed away. And I know a lot of people were sort of drawing the parallel like Dave was. And this is the most ridiculous thing ever, maybe in wrestling, but buckle up. We're going to fucking beat it 3 days later.
Oh yeah, we're going to beat that. Yeah, we're going to beat it on all levels here in a second. So go ahead.
SmackDown, November 11th. Bossman gets a win over Farouk, but later in the show, they show.
That's it. We beat it.
Yeah, there you go. We show Big Show's dad's funeral, and well, I'll let you take it from here.
Sitting home on a beautiful, blustery Sunday afternoon. Actually, it was really Sunday morning. I get a phone call. Hey, pal, what are you doing? And I start innocently enough telling him what I had planned for the day with my family. And he says, Well, hey, I need a favor. We got the crew up there, and Boss Man and Show, we're doing this little funeral scene. And God damn it, Bruce, I just can't have it fucked up. Can you help me out and get over there and produce this for me? I'm like, huh? And I said, well, what do you want? I mean, what do you want to do? He starts explaining everything that he wants to do. And he's like, have fun with it. God damn it. I mean, it's got to be tongue in cheek. You got to go over the top, and we got to have fun so that people know that, this is entertainment and we're making movies here, pal. Like, okay. So I go over, it was in Fairfield Cemetery in Fairfield, Connecticut. And they have from the Blues Brothers, the cop car with the big horn on top and the PA system and everything. And that's what Boss Man's going to drive and interrupt this thing. We got a bunch of extras that are there as family members, and of course, Big Show and everything, and a casket. We've got a hole dug. We have an entire cemetery plot for what would be done for an actual funeral. Did I mention this is Sunday afternoon?
No. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So it's Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon. It's a weekend. It's a Sunday. What do a lot of people do on Sundays? Then they go and they visit their loved ones.
They decorate they decorate and they bring flowers and pay their respects. The whole deal. Take
the kids. Hey kids, we're gonna go put flowers on Grandma and Grandpa's grave. Pay our respects. Well, not only do those type of things happen in cemeteries, but you know what else happens in cemeteries sometimes?
They bury people.
For real. For real, they really bury people, and they really have funeral and ceremonies and things like that going on in the cemeteries. Now, I had worked at this cemetery before, and they were very cooperative, and they knew that we pretty much...
This is a working cemetery?
Definitely a working cemeteries. We got them over at Cemeteries R Us.
Okay.
And just in the phone book, yellow pages, white pages too. But they were friendly, and we were always very respectful. But everything I'd ever done there, with the exception of one shoot, I'd done at night, and I didn't really know how busy that the cemetery really was. Business hours, I guess.
Business hours.
Well, there's business hours for a cemetery, damn it. So I get there and I'm like, holy shit, there's a lot of people here. And there's families and it's open, obviously to the public for people to come in and pay their respects to their family members and shit. And I'm laying this out and I'm thinking, how do I do this without really disrupting everything? And on the other side of the cemetery is a legit burial taking place with cars and just people and dead people and all that good shit. So I'm thinking, okay, you know what? I can do it where I record Boss Man, but I don't play it out over the loudspeaker. So they don't get to hear him doing that. And then I'm thinking, well, I need Big Show to react. And I've got to time all this stuff. Well, one thing leads to another, and we make the decision that if we play it low enough, Big Show will be able to hear it. I can amplify it on TV, so on and so forth. But just the car driving through the cemetery, everybody in the place stops and looks. Because you got the Blues Brothers car with the big speaker coming through the damn thing. And then Boss Man, just on the PA alone, is so loud without the PA going, hey, Big Show, hey, your dad is dead. Hey, your dad is dead. And I knew that I had one shot at it. I had one shot because as soon as we did this, they were going to come over and kick us out. And it would be probably my last time ever shooting in this cemetery. So I walked through and I said, okay, we need to do like a little physicality here. I'm not walking through it. I'm just talking through it with the guys. And then I said, now, Ray, when you hook it up, this has to be fast. And I kind of rigged it up to where all he had to do was run the chain through a couple of deals, hook it up to the back, boom. And I said, take off. And Show says, what if I jump on the casket? I said, damn, man, I don't want you to get hurt. He goes, I won't get hurt. It'll be like surfing, man. He goes, I'll do it. He goes, and then I'll take a bump off of it before he gets to the road. All right, let's feel that one out. Because I only got one shot at this. If it feels right, go ahead and do it. If it doesn't, just skip it and chase it. I said, but I also don't want it to look like Laurel and Hardy. I don't want you, chasing after him. Hey, we don't want this to be silly. So, man, I just went for it. And we turned the speaker on. What I thought was low, but once you started, you couldn't stop it. And you see like people actually, turning and looking, and you get the disgust, which we wanted as well, but I didn't really want it from civilians as much as I did, the actors and actresses that were a part of the funeral. And he came to, hey, you daddy dead. And fucking Big Show, once he ties the thing, they took a hell of an ass whooping at the gravesite, and then jumps on the back of the casket. Ray peels out. And when he peels out, he's like on the grass and shit. And so like I'm half-ass tearing up parts of the cemetery. And when he does, the casket comes off, Big Show's on it, and it's hitting bumps as it goes along. And Big Show takes this humongous bump. I thought he was dead. And I told Ray, I said, just keep going and get the fuck out of here. Go outside, go down around the corner, and we'll stage and we'll meet out there, because I guarantee you we're gone right after this. And that's exactly what we did. We shot the damn thing, went around the corner, had a little staging area around the corner. I stayed back and took the heat and apologized and had a wad of cash and thanked them for their time and told them I would repair everything, and apologized to everybody that was around. People started pulling up that were not real happy that what their kids had seen and shit like that. And I was like, you know what? I got to go. And got the hell out of Dodge. Needless to say, it was the last time I used that cemetery. But we did it over the top, and that's what you saw. And I produced it.
What did Boss Man think of this? What did Big Show think of it? And most importantly, what did Vince think when he finally saw the footage?
What did the real Boss Man think of it?
Yeah.
Vince loved it. Vince loved it and thought it was great, and started critiquing it. You should have done this and you should have done that. I said, Vince, man, there was a funeral going on. What do you mean? I said, there's a funeral going on. I said, this what they weren't told what we were going to do. And I said, yeah, I'm looking at him because I know that's why he called me. I know that's because he knew I would get it done, and anybody else would have gone there and not have even gotten the first shot done, because they would have explained it and they would have shut it down. He knew what he was doing. Bruce, get it done. Goddamn. Just do whatever it takes. So I got it done. Boss Man loved it, and Big Show loved it. They both thought it was campy and some of the best stuff that they'd ever done. And when you look at it from an outsider looking in, I guess, and from a just shotgun go in and get something done. Look, I'm gonna pat myself on the back. It was pretty good for that. Taste wise, all that other good shit, maybe not so much, but being able to pull it off, and we pulled the fucker off, was pretty damn impressive, if you ask me, on a Sunday afternoon with no notice.
Yeah, man, this is one of the most memorable skits, whether you like it or don't. It is one of the most memorable. Was anybody offended by this, like amongst the boys? Did anybody say, hey man, that's fucked up?
No, because it was so over the top. I think that it was so over the top at that point that people had gotten over that aspect of it. It had become a wrestling angle at that point. For me, the hard part for me was the fact that a real funeral was going on in the cemetery and that there were families there.
Right.
And that we were disruptive. We were disruptive. And that was a judgment call on the fly. And I didn't realize that even, turned down. And when he started going, it was loud and it was going everywhere. I couldn't stop it. I had to go. It was like, if I'd stopped it, I would have lost the shoot. I would have lost everything. So you just have to go, and you have to go through it, and you have to do it. And you better pray that your cameras and your mics and everything works. And we had the best crews in the world out there, man. And it worked. So just sometimes you got to get it up and go.
Survivor Series 1999 goes down in Detroit. Big Show wins a handicap match over Bossman and Prince Albert and Midian and Viscera. All these dudes. Of course, Bossman was supposed to team with Taka, Sho Funaki, and Blue Meanie, but he beat them all up in the dressing room before the match started. It gets a -1 star in the Observer, but it did tell a story. And later in the show, Big Show would win the world title in a triple threat against Triple H and The Rock. So quite a turnaround here for Big Show, is it not?
Yeah, it is. And it was, that nod to take him to that next level. And Vince, in a big part of it too, was his acting chops, and the fact that, Show went with all this stuff and had pretty good acting chops. And he has great comedic timing as well.
The November 15th edition of Raw sees Bossman beat The Rock in a hardcore match to determine the #1 contender. And Rock grabs a camera and takes a photo during the match, which is kind of fun. In the end, though, The Rock is going to have a little interference here from Prince Albert, nails him with a chair, and Bossman gets the pin after the Bossman slam. So it's a pretty big deal that happens. They do a rematch on SmackDown 3 days later, and Rock gets the win with a rock bottom. November 22nd, we have The Rock in a handicap match against Albert and Bossman. Foley comes out without his mask to be the partner and sort of reprise Rock and Sock connection. He puts the Socko claw on both guys. We'll fast forward a couple of days later, and we see Bossman beat Kane in a hardcore title match. They're brawling all over the stands, even in the hockey penalty box. And he sort of bounces around the undercard for a little bit. On December 9th, Bossman was with Show's mom, and he finds out that his dad wasn't his real dad. Now, this happens on December 9th. So Russo's not here at this point. He's in WCW. Talk to me about this whole, your dad's not your real dad storyline.
Well, you got to continue it. Hell, and obviously he was pretty damn close to his dad. So let's keep hitting that button.
Silly.
Damn, what if his dad wasn't his real dad? Good shit. He's been lied to his whole life.
Armageddon is the payoff here in Fort Lauderdale on December 12th. The Big Show pins the Bossman in 3 minutes to retain his WWF title. And, they only do 3 minutes. As I said, the crowd's already chanting boring 2 minutes into the match, and Show just goes straight to the finish with a choke slam. And the next night, Show wins a handicap match to keep this title run working here. He's beating both Bossman and Albert when he chokeslams both guys. So things are not looking so hot for the Bossman here. We'll fast forward a little bit here, and we see on January 17th, Test beats Bossman to win the hardcore title. And they're brawling a little later in this show, and Bossman throws Albert into a dressing room. And we see, or he sees, Tori topless, or at least he did in storyline. And this is going to sort of break up Bossman and Albert. Why was the decision made to sort of split them up here? Just trying to have something for them to do? That's what it feels like.
Yeah, and there just wasn't really any chemistry there, and just trying to figure out something there for Albert, and just trying new things. It was a transition time for us in a lot of respects, because we're just trying new talent, trying new things, a new group of writers, everything. And it's a feeling out period. So there was a lot of that hodgepodginess during this time.
Royal Rumble 2000 goes down on January 23rd. Bossman comes in number 9. He eliminates Chyna and Farouk, but is thrown out by The Rock. We'll fast forward to the No Way Out pay-per-view the next month. Taz beats Boss Man by DQ in about 50 seconds. Taz came in the prior month at the Royal Rumble and ended Kurt Angle's undefeated streak in his debut. But a month later, he's put together with Boss Man and gets a DQ win here. What's the thinking in putting Taz with Boss Man just 1 month on the heels of beating Kurt Angle?
Give him a victory over a big guy, and it was a DQ victory, but it was a way just to keep him in the mix and keep him working with top guys.
Was there
him being Taz?
Did you feel like Boss Man's role here was to sort of lend his credibility to some undercard talents and sort of help get him over? Because you do this cycle with Prince Albert, but now you switch on March 27th, and now Bull Buchanan's with him, and it feels like, hey, we've seen this before. Is that sort of the thinking?
Exactly, and just trying to get some of these younger guys to be able to work with Boss Man, who was a veteran, and be able to hopefully teach them. A big man teaching another big man how to work, and Boss Man was good for that.
Backlash 2000 goes down in Washington on April 30th. We see Boss Man and Buchanan beat the Acolytes, and that's a pretty big win for them. I guess we'll keep rolling here a little bit. June 5th. On Raw, we see the Hardy Boys beat Boss Man and Bull Buchanan, and after the match, Boss Man knocks Buchanan out with his nightstick when his back was turned. What's the thinking here? Let's hey, we've tried this, now let's fucking bust him up and create another feud here, or was Bull not getting over? What was the thinking here?
The same thing, and it was just more of a thing, also trying out Big Boss Man being an asshole, taking young guys under his wing like he did with Albert and turning on them, getting sick. He's hard to have a partner. He's hard to have a friend, and getting that loner mentality a little bit where he wants to come across like he's going to help somebody and he's got a new buddy, but really he's a dick and only trying to get ahead and thinking for himself.
It happens on June 19th. Undertaker beat Boss Man and Bull when Boss Man turned on Bull. And a couple of days later, we see a European title match where Boss Man would beat Eddie Guerrero by DQ. So, of course, Eddie retains. But in the process, Boss Man punches Chyna in the face. And then she hits Boss Man with the belt, which the ref sees, and that draws the DQ. Any sort of hesitation at this point in punching Chyna in the face, or at this point has she been established as an equal?
At that point, she'd been established working with guys so much that it was really a non-issue.
Right. You do see Boss Man make a lot of appearances on Jacked and house shows. It does feel like he's been pushed down the roster a little bit. At any point towards the end of his run here, was he feeling pretty frustrated with his placement on the card, or just happy to be on the roster?
For me, I think at this point he was happy to be on the roster because there wasn't really much choice for him. And, he had been there and left and come back. And I think they expected a little bit more out of him when he came back. We used everything that we could. And I think that we got as much as we were going to get out of him for this run at this point. I think that he felt it, and also Creative felt it as well. I know Vince was feeling it.
It's worth mentioning here, the September 4th edition of Raw, we see Crash Holly practicing lines to pick up women when Boss Man pours a drink over his head, and Malenko tries to stand up to Boss Man, but Boss Man just pie faces him. So Blackman beats Boss Man, I'll get it right, in a hardcore title match when Crash threw coffee in Boss Man's face. We covered this whole coffee in the good eye thing with Vader. If you go through enough of this stuff, it does feel like there's really nothing original in wrestling anymore.
Oh, hell no. Everything's been done twice.
Yeah. The Raw on January 7th in Madison Square Garden is a pretty big deal here, especially for the Boss Man, because Austin and Rock are teaming up to take on Boss Man and Booker. And that's quite a difference from being on Jacked. So kudos to him. Let's get to the Royal Rumble 02. Of course, it goes down in Atlanta. Boss Man comes in the Rumble match at number 3. He doesn't eliminate anyone, and he's thrown out by Rikishi. And they actually start doing a pretty interesting tag situation on February 2nd and 3rd. We see Boss Man teaming with Mr. Perfect to take on Crash and a very young Randy Orton. Of course, we know that Boss Man and Perfect were very good friends, and Perfect is in here all of a sudden. It feels like old times, does it not?
It was, and it was just in this particular instance, you take two veterans and put them with some of the younger guys. And in particular, for that, I'm sure it was for Randy's benefit to be able to be in the ring and work with guys that knew how to work, that could teach him and give him all those nuances that Randy needed at that time.
May 20th, 2002, Tommy Dreamer would beat the Big Boss Man in what was Ray's last match in the WWF. He was riding his Harley in 2002, hit a deer, and got hurt pretty badly. Do you remember what happened here?
You know, I remember the accident. I don't remember the extent of the injuries and everything, but it was unfortunately, you know, kind of the beginning of the end, because he didn't come back. And it was, you know, I don't know what happened beyond that, but I do know that Ray was battling some injuries and also just battling a little bit depressed, not being in the ring and not really, I hate to say that he didn't feel wanted, because he was, but I think that he was just a little bummed out, you know, not being able to be on the road all the time. That was something he really enjoyed.
Yeah, it's a fun, you know, career, but it does feel like the end is not exactly the way anybody would really want to hear. He's sent down to Ohio Valley to train, but that doesn't really work out. Allegedly, he's doing a 6-man tag match in OVW, and he's in a 6-man just to sort of protect his back because it's still in relatively bad shape. But during the match, he winds up hurting his shoulder and winds up having surgery. And that feels like the end of his career here with the company. What happened in OVW and that little experiment that really is the last we would see or hear of him in this regard?
He wasn't ready to come back. He just wasn't ready to come back. And he was cleared, but I don't think that he was being completely honest with his injuries, and he got out there just too soon. And when you do that, you try and compensate with other things. And the compensation led to the shoulder injury, and the shoulder injury led to surgery, which then furthered even longer that he would be out. So, you know, bad timing on top of bad timing on top of bad timing.
It's a tough deal, because we mentioned earlier that Ray and Curt were really good friends, and Curt passed away in 2003, and Ray took it very hard. Did you ever talk to Ray after Curt passed away?
I did, actually. And, you know, they were like brothers. I mean, they really were. And I think that Ray, we all did. You know, when you lose a family member, you lose someone close, you always kind of half-ass look inside and blame yourself. And I think there was a part of Ray that wished that he could have been there to save Curt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just, he lost a brother, and that was hard. And I only talked to Ray. That was the only time I talked to Ray, because I knew they were close. And sadness. I mean, it was just sadness and kind of wishing that, you know, if I had been there, if I'd been there with him, that never would have happened. So yeah, he was pretty damn down.
Let's talk about Ted DiBiase. DiBiase says that religion really became a part of Ray's life after talking with Ted and Steve Williams over in Japan for the IWA in 2004. DiBiase would say they hadn't seen each other for a very long time, but when they saw each other in January of 2004, he was excited to see him. He'd always thought he was a great guy. He was a fun guy. He wasn't a troublemaker. And just through the course of conversation, Bobby Fulton and DiBiase started to talk to Ray Traylor a little bit about religion. And for the rest of the tour, he was reading the Bible on the bus and asking the guys questions, and even came to some of the meetings with his wife. And DiBiase says, I want to believe that he accepted religion, but I can't be sure. Ray's final match was August 31st in Tokyo, Japan. He lost in the finals of this IWA heavyweight tournament to Jim Duggan. And then ultimately Ray passed away on September 22nd, 2004 at the age of 42 of what was described as a massive heart attack. His wife came in the room and found him on the couch. She bent over to kiss him and felt that he was cold. So she offered him a blanket. And when there was no response, she noticed he wasn't breathing. So she called 911 and the paramedics couldn't revive him. So they rushed him to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. He had 2 daughters, Lacey and Megan. In 2016, his daughters and wife had their chance to induct him into the WWE Hall of Fame. Whew. I hate when we have to do these episodes and we finish with a guy passing away. He was a friend of yours. How did you hear the news? What impact and what effect did this have on you, Bruce?
You know, it goes quick. I mean, you hear about it and, you become callous. In this business, you become callous to a lot of things. And unfortunately, sometimes losing a brother is one of them. So, and other times, you know, it's just different. It's just too young. It was just too damn young. He loved those little girls so much, and he loved his wife. I mean, good God. Ray was just a big old country boy. That when you do a description, you know, like listen to Hillbilly Jim at the Hall of Fame, and that was Ray Traylor, from Cobb County, Georgia. Life's not fair. And I think they just took him too soon, and I wish it could have gone, a different way. But for whatever reason, man, his heart just gave out, and we lost, obviously great talent, lost a great friend, and a great father and husband. So when that happens, it's just a sad deal. And he's missed to this day. When I go back and I love the chubby boss man shots. When he first came in, and he still had that baby fat on him because he was so innocent. But he never lost that innocence in his eyes, and I always thought that was cool. Sorely missed, man. He was a friend, and he was just a hell of an addition to the business, and he's missed every day.
Certainly a worthy WWE Hall of Famer. What do you think Ray Traylor's legacy in the wrestling business will be?
I think it's going to be early Boss Man. I think it's going to be that original induction and that original stuff with Hulk. To me, that was the big Boss Man. That personified that character and just carried it all the way through his career. And I think that's what he's going to be remembered for. And that when you sum it all up, that's it.
Let's take some questions. We invite you to ask questions for next week's episode on Brother Love. You can ask them on Facebook at facebook.com/something to wrestle, or of course on Twitter at Prichard Show. Bruce, are you ready?
Go for it.
Michael wants to know, is it true that the Big Boss Man left the WWF after his first run because he didn't want to be associated with the scandals and other bad press? Cornette mentioned this recently when he mentioned that Boss Man worked for Smoky Mountain.
I never heard that. No, he was, the first time he left, he was just kind of burned out and had been working on top, wasn't doing it anymore.
Ben wants to know, were you backstage when the news broke of Ray's death? How did it affect the backstage area? Anytime that we lose somebody in the family, it's tough. And, it affects everybody differently, but it's tough. David wants to know, in your opinion, what was Ray Traylor's best match?
Whew. My favorite stuff is the stuff that he did with Hogan, going back to those cage matches. The stuff that he did, his whole run with Hogan, I thought was some of his best work. And that was a young baby boss man.
Alexander wants to know, do you think the Twin Towers might have worked better if it was one man gang and the dirty cop boss man as opposed to Akeem?
No, Akeem was perfect.
Steven wants to know, from a Ryder Booker perspective, was he ever close to winning the Intercontinental or Heavyweight Championship?
No, he was not.
Stuart wants to know, did you ever see Ray practice spinning the nightstick in his hands to get ready for the TV spots?
All the time. Practice makes perfect.
James wants to know, how was the decision made to make the transition to the tactical gear from the classic blue uniform?
It was something that Vince McMahon wanted to do to update his look, coming back and not just being the same old boss man.
Chewy wants to know, was tapping the stairs with this nightstick on the last run symbolic, like some sort of nod to his wife or kids, or just something he did that he thought looked cool?
Something he did, make noise, make people notice.
This is a pretty fun one. I kind of forgot about this. Emmanuel wants to know, I remember hearing about Bossman being named in a string of bank robberies and Ray had to clear his name. What was the story behind that?
That was true. It was a guy that looked like him and that had been, and I want to say it was even in Georgia or something. It was down south, but it was a guy that looked like him and someone identified him as the big boss man on TV. And yeah, he had to go in and do the whole 9 yards. They got fingerprinted the whole thing, and obviously he was in a different part of the country and was documented where he was when the robberies took place. But yeah, that happened.
Peter wants to know, Bossman had one of the best punches in wrestling. Were they live rounds?
Piece of cake, like a feather.
Rory wants to know, has Bruce ever served hard time?
You know it. I took that damn bowling ball, but again, working with Bossman was a night off.
Joseph wants to know, during his Attitude Era run, was there any consideration to bringing back the old school Bossman outfit?
No.
Andy wants to know, Cornette tells the story of Big Bubba being scared to go on the scaffold at Starrcade because he was afraid of heights. How did you guys convince Bossman to go along with being hung and lifted high above the ring at WrestleMania?
I think the fact that it was WrestleMania and it was Undertaker and it was a big event that, I don't remember him ever having any concern of the heights or anything like that at all. I mean, I was out there for all the rehearsals and the whole 9 yards, and he never had any reservation. He may have been afraid of heights, but he didn't let us know.
Jay wants to know, how would it sound if Vince were to pitch the jailhouse match?
God damn it, pal. Just think about it when you finally get in the slammer and there's this big, nasty inmate that just wants to have his way with you. And then once we get your pet, no, I don't know, something like that.
Last but certainly not least,
get in the jail, and then
Ben wants to know, hypothetically, what would it sound like if Jim Cornette sang Big Boss Man's theme?
If you ever going down to Cobb County, Georgia, better not mess around or you're gonna do hard times. You'll be doing hard times. Sometimes I like hard times with my own nightstick. I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, go check out our bonus show, the 1992 Royal Rumble. It's up right now. It's exclusive to YouTube, and we've got a domain set up to forward. It's somethingtowrestle.com. So go check it out. If you haven't already, like us on Facebook. The Morning Deuce with Bruce is getting a little more interesting these days. Check it out. It's facebook.com/somethingtowrestle. As always, you can vote in our polls and ask questions right now on Twitter @Prichard Show. Instagram has some rare behind the scenes photos that you've never seen before. It's on Instagram @Prichard Show. And don't forget, next week, we've got a very special surprise for you. Something that when I showed it to you a couple of weeks ago, Bruce, you said, holy fuck, I can't believe this is real. How long did this take? Give everybody a tease. Of course, we're covering the Brother Love episode, but we're going to announce something that nobody ever knew they wanted, but they're going to fucking love. Are they not?
I love it. You know, it's absolutely. You want me to say what it is?
No, don't say what it is. Let's keep everybody sort of guessing.
Let me just say this: the fact that someone spent the amount of time, effort, and detail that they put into to everything that was involved blows my mind, and that's kind of hard to do these days.
And we're going to celebrate by releasing this unbelievable masterpiece that a super fan has put together with tireless, endless, countless hours of effort and time and energy. And it's coming to you next week as a special little sprinkle on top for episode 100 of Something to Wrestle With. Bruce Prichard.